You've probably been told that a quiet mind is a reward for people who've fixed their lives. But tonight, I want to flip this belief upside down. What if your mind isn't noisy because you're broken, but because nobody ever taught you how to rest while life is still messy? What if deep sleep and inner peace aren't prizes at the end of the race, but tools you can use during the race? In this journey, I'm not going to ask you to escape your life. I'm going to walk with you right into it, stories, fears, worries, and all, and show you how Zen turns chaos into a cradle. You lay down at night, close your eyes, and your brain throws a party you weren't invited to. Old conversations replay, future disasters are rehearsed, and every regret decides to hold a meeting. You try to shut it all off, but your thoughts don't have an off button, do they? Here's the strange truth. The more you fight your thoughts, the louder they get. Zen takes the opposite path. It doesn't tell you to fight your mind. It teaches you how to sit beside it. Not as an enemy, but as a friend you're finally learning to understand. This isn't going to be a lecture full of abstract concepts you forget tomorrow morning. For the next 3 hours, you'll walk through real stories, raw emotions, and honest human moments. Some might sound suspiciously like your own life in disguise. You'll meet people who carried anxiety like armor, who tried to control everything, who felt small, lost, or never enough. And you'll see, through their journeys, how one small shift in awareness can change the way they breathe, sleep, and live. You won't just hear Zen teachings, you'll feel them moving through real lives. We're going to challenge a lot of beliefs you've silently carried for years. Beliefs like, rest is a reward I have to earn, or I'll relax when everything is finally okay. Spoiler, everything will never be perfectly okay. And that's not a curse. It's a doorway. You'll hear why trying to control your emotions doesn't work, and why trying to fix yourself before you're allowed peace is a cruel myth. Instead, we'll explore how peace appears the moment you stop treating your heart like a problem. One story at a time, your nervous system will start to hear a new message. You're allowed to rest, even like this. Along the way, I'll share personal experiences, the nights I couldn't sleep, the seasons where life fell apart, times when Zen wasn't a pretty quote on a screen, but a rope I held onto in the dark. You'll see practices that were born not in perfect temples, but in cluttered rooms, crowded days, and noisy minds. We'll use simple analogies: a river, a guest house, an empty boat, a falling leaf. So even the deepest ideas feel soft and familiar. You won't need any special background, any spiritual label, or any belief system to follow along. Just a tired heart and a curious mind are enough. This journey will speak to the part of you that is exhausted from pretending. Pretending you're always fine. Pretending you're always strong. Pretending you're not scared of losing control. Here, you don't have to impress anyone, not even yourself. You'll be gently invited to drop the performance, layer by layer, breath by breath. As the stories unfold, you may catch yourself thinking, wait, that's me. That's how I react. That's how I run. Good. That recognition is not a problem. It's the first doorway to freedom, because you can't change a pattern you don't dare to see. By the end of this night, I don't promise that your life will be magically fixed, but I do promise you'll see it differently. And that changes everything. You'll understand why your thoughts spin the way they do, why your emotions crash in waves, why your body holds tension in certain places. You'll leave with concrete practices you can carry into tomorrow morning and every night after. Tools not just to sleep soundly, but to wake up joyful, even when nothing outside has changed yet, Because the real transformation begins not when the world becomes softer, but when your way of meeting the world becomes wiser. So, as you settle in, maybe under a blanket, maybe with dim lights, maybe with your eyes already heavy, consider this entire video a long, gentle conversation just between you and me. Each story is a hand on your shoulder, each teaching a quiet reminder that you're less alone than you think. Somewhere between your next breath and the last word of this journey, something in you may finally exhale in a way it hasn't in years. And who knows? As you drift into sleep, you might just discover that peace was never as far away as your mind made it seem. It was here, waiting, in the simple act of listening, feeling, and allowing yourself to be fully human. Right here, right now, tonight. Tonight, I want you to imagine that I'm sitting right beside your bed, not as a distant guru on a mountain, but as a friend who has also stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m. The room is dim, the noise of the day is finally fading, and it's just you, your breath, and this quiet story we're about to walk into together. You've done what you could today, whether you feel it was enough or not, and now life is inviting you into a different kind of practice. This is not the time to prove anything, fix everything, or win another invisible race that nobody is watching. This is the hour when even the busiest cities grow quiet, and your mind, stubborn as it is, starts asking for rest as well. So for a few minutes, let yourself believe that you don't have to carry the whole world on your shoulders. Right now, it's just you, this soft darkness, and a path into Zen that was made for your tired heart. Maybe your days have started to feel like a long corridor of notifications, demands, and small emergencies that never end. You lie down, turn off the light, but the corridor is still inside your head, full of voices saying, "You forgot this," or "You should have done that." It's almost funny, if you think about it, how your body is exhausted, but your mind suddenly decides it's the perfect time for a meeting. Zen doesn't try to shout over that meeting or force silence with willpower. Instead, it gently invites you to step out of the corridor and into a small inner room where nothing urgent is allowed to enter. That inner room is what we'll slowly build together tonight. One breath and one image at a time. And the beautiful part is that this room isn't new. It has been waiting for you for years. I remember a season of my own life when nights felt like punishment rather than rest. I would look at the clock, see 2:47 Oi, M.E. Chum, and feel my chest tighten because I knew the alarm was marching closer. The more I begged for sleep, the further it seemed to run from me. Like a shy animal I kept chasing with heavy footsteps. I read articles, tried strange teas, counted imaginary sheep until they were all exhausted before I was. Nothing really changed until I stopped treating sleep as a task to complete and started seeing it as a guest to welcome. Zen entered my nights not as a magic trick, but as a different attitude toward the way my mind moved. And that shift, quiet and simple, changed much more than my schedule. Think of your mind right now like a snow globe that has been shaken all day long. Inside it, there are thoughts, worries, conversations, and unfinished to-do lists swirling like shiny particles. During the day, you almost don't notice the chaos because you're busy running from one thing to another. But at night, when everything outside finally stops, you suddenly see how much is still spinning inside. Zen doesn't ask you to smash the snow globe or throw it away. It just asks you to place it gently on the table. If you don't keep shaking it, the flakes slowly begin to fall on their own, without effort. Your role is not to control every flake, but to stop shaking the globe with fear and urgency. Now feel the weight of your body resting where you are, as if the bed were an old friend holding you without judgment. Notice how your back, your legs, your arms are supported, almost like a child being carried. All day long, your body carried you through tasks, traffic, screens, and conversations that sometimes drained you. Here, in this moment, the roles reverse. You don't have to carry the day anymore. The bed carries you. Zen often begins in the most simple and physical way, with this honest recognition of support. You don't need incense or a temple dome above your head, only this contact with gravity and softness. When your body understands that it is allowed to rest, the mind slowly receives permission to rest too. Let's start with something small and kind, your breath. You don't need to breathe correctly, because your body has been breathing since before you knew what breathing was. All we will do is notice it, like paying attention to a friend who has always been there, but was never really heard. Inhale gently through your nose, as if you were smelling something comforting and familiar. Exhale a little longer than you inhale, imagining that the breath leaves the body carrying tiny bits of tension with it. You don't have to count perfectly, but if you like, you can follow a simple rhythm. In for 4, out for 6. With every soft exhale, imagine that the day gets just a little more distant, like a town you left behind on a quiet train. Sleep, in many ways, is like a cat. If you chase it, clap your hands, and call its name desperately, it hides under the couch and stares at you suspiciously. But if you sit quietly, relaxed, doing something simple and calm, the cat eventually comes, chooses your lap, and curls up without asking permission. Zen doesn't teach you how to grab the cat. It teaches you how to become the kind of presence the cat trusts. That's what we're doing with your mind now, softening the edges so sleep feels safe to approach. No pressure, no competition, no, I must fall asleep right now or tomorrow is ruined. Just an honest willingness to sit quietly inside your own life and see what arrives. I want you to imagine your bed not as a battlefield where you fight insomnia, but as a small inner temple. In this temple, the rules are different from the ones outside your blankets. Here, nothing you did wrong today is allowed to enter without taking off its shoes of judgment at the door. Here, the voices of comparison and self-criticism have to whisper, and eventually they get tired and leave. This temple doesn't require fancy rituals, only sincerity and a bit of courage to be with yourself. Every time you lie down at night, you are walking back into this sacred space, even if no one else ever sees it. And slowly, as you visit it more consciously, the temple begins to feel more real than the noise you came from. Some people build a small ritual before sleep to help their minds understand that the temple is opening. It can be as simple as turning off bright lights and keeping only a warm, gentle glow in the room. You might decide that, 30 minutes before bed, the phone no longer deserves a front row seat in your attention. Maybe you drink a cup of warm tea, not as a magic potion, but as a slow signal that the pace is changing. You could even stretch your body lightly, like a bow being unstrung after a long day of tension. These are not rules. They are offerings to your own nervous system, which has been on alert for hours. Every small, repeated signal tells your brain, we are safe now. It's okay to lower the guards. One practice that helped me a lot was what I started calling emptying the backpack of the day. Before sleep, I would take a notebook and write down everything that was buzzing in my head. Ideas, worries, tasks, even silly thoughts that seemed unimportant but refused to leave. It felt like taking off a heavy backpack and putting each item on the floor, saying, I will carry you again tomorrow, but not tonight. Zen doesn't forbid planning. It just asks us not to drag the entire office into bed. You could do the same, even if it's just 3 lines capturing what's still open inside you. Once it's on paper, your mind doesn't need to grip it so tightly while you sleep. Maybe you've noticed that the most exhausting part of the night is not the lack of sleep, but the war you start with yourself. You replay conversations, judge every word you said, and imagine the worst reactions from others. You look back at the day as if you were a harsh teacher, grading your own test with a red pen. What if, just for tonight, you decided to be a kinder teacher, one who sees effort instead of only mistakes? In Zen, we do not deny responsibility, but we also don't forget our humanity. You are allowed to be an unfinished work, resting in the middle of a long journey. The night is not a court where you are sentenced. It is a place where the heart can heal in silence. I once mentored a young woman who hated going to bed because she felt the night was when all her failures woke up. She told me, "During the day, I can distract myself with work and noise, but at night, it's just me and my thoughts." We began to slowly change the story she told herself about the night, turning it from an enemy into an ally. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong today?" I asked her to try, "What did I survive today?" Little by little, the night became a mirror of resilience rather than a list of accusations. Her sleep didn't transform in one magical evening, but the relationship with the darkness did. And when that relationship softened, sleep quietly slipped through the door she had kept locked for so long. There is a strange habit many of us share. We demand perfection from ourselves exactly when we are most tired. We lie in bed and suddenly expect our mind to be wise, calm, and totally under control. It's like asking a marathon runner, right after the finish line, to give a brilliant speech without catching their breath. Zen invites you to see that by nighttime, your inner runner is sweaty, shaky, and has every right to sit down. You don't need to resolve childhood issues and life purpose at 11:42 p.m. All you truly need in this moment is permission to not fix everything before closing your eyes. Ironically, it's this very permission that often unlocks deeper rest. As you lie here, you might notice a part of your mind trying to negotiate. If I relax now, will I be more productive tomorrow? This is the voice that has turned even rest into a kind of investment with expected returns. Zen smiles gently at that voice and doesn't fight it, but it also doesn't buy its logic. You were not born to become a perfect productivity machine that occasionally charges its battery. You are a living being with seasons, tides, and rhythms that do not follow spreadsheets. Sleep is not a reward you earn only if the day went well. It is a basic kindness toward your own existence. And when you treat it as kindness instead of currency, the heart begins to soften in ways that numbers can't measure. If you pay attention, you'll notice that the night has its own kind of music. There are sounds that never appear in the daytime. The distant hum of a fridge, a car passing slowly, an occasional dog barking at a mystery only it can see. For most of your life, these sounds were just background noise, unnoticed and uninvited. Tonight, you can treat them as part of the orchestra of your rest, not as interruptions. Zen is very simple in that way. It says, let everything belong, instead of make everything disappear. The more you allow small sounds, small sensations, and small thoughts to exist without fighting them, the less they disturb you. They are just parts of the night doing what they always do, while you learn a new way of listening. You might be thinking, this all sounds nice, but my mind is still busy, and my body is still tense. That's okay. Zen is not a switch you flip. It's more like a dimmer slowly turning down the brightness. Even as you listen now, something in you is already shifting, even if you don't feel it clearly yet. Every tiny moment of noticing your breath instead of following a thought is like placing one more stone in the foundation of your inner temple. No stone seems impressive on its own, but together they hold the weight of an entire sanctuary. Tonight is not about finishing construction. It's about laying a few honest stones with care. Tomorrow night and the next, you will find this foundation waiting for you a little stronger each time. There will come a point in this journey where you won't remember the exact words I'm saying anymore. Your mind will drift, the story will blur, and sentences will blend into the gentle fog of sleep. That is not a failure of attention. That is the goal quietly arriving. Zen teachings for sleep are like a friend who keeps talking softly until your worries forget you're listening. The moment you stop tracking every phrase is the moment your deeper self takes over the process. You don't need to follow along perfectly to benefit from this. Your nervous system is hearing what it needs. So if you fade in and out, know that this too is part of the practice. Soon, we'll begin to look at the night itself through Zen eyes, as something sacred instead of scary. We'll walk into stories that show you how darkness has always been a friend to those who learn to sit with it. You'll see how rest is not the opposite of growth, but the secret soil where growth takes root. For now, let this first step be enough. You arrived, you listened, and you allowed yourself to breathe a little deeper. Perhaps the idea of an inner temple is already starting to feel less abstract and more like a place your heart recognizes. You don't have to rush to the next lesson. The path will unfold at the rhythm of your own breath. But when you're ready, we'll gently open another door together, and the night will start to look very different from the inside. At some point in life, almost everyone starts to see the night as an enemy. You know that feeling, right? The clock hits a certain hour, and your body whispers, "Finally," but your mind says, "Not yet. We still have things to worry about." Daytime becomes the supposedly normal time, and the night turns into this strange territory where fears, doubts, and regrets wake up. It's like the sun goes down and suddenly your own thoughts get louder, as if they've been waiting backstage all day. Zen looks at this very differently and gently flips the script. Instead of seeing night as a battlefield, it sees night as a secret garden where the deepest healing can happen. And once you start to feel that, the dark hours stop being so scary and start to feel strangely sacred. Imagine your day as a busy marketplace, full of people shouting prices, bargaining, rushing in all directions. That's your mind from morning to evening, always reacting, buying ideas, selling energy, trying not to lose anything important. Now imagine that, a few streets away, there is a small monastery hidden behind a simple wooden gate. Inside, the same world exists, but the pace is slower, the voices are softer, and you can finally hear your own footsteps. For Zen, night is exactly that monastery, built inside the same city of your life. Most people never walk through its gate. They just bring the marketplace noise into their bed. But the moment you see that a monastery exists at all, you already have a different way to cross the night. I remember one retreat where this difference became crystal clear to me. During the day, the temple was full of activity. People cooking, cleaning, meditating, asking questions. But at night, something almost magical happened. Even though nothing special took place. The hallways got quieter, The air felt thicker, and the sound of sandals on old wooden floors echoed like a soft drum. We didn't get new teachings at night. No big speeches, no fireworks of wisdom. We just shared the darkness with simple sounds. A door sliding, a kettle humming, distant chanting fading into silence. And yet, those nights taught me more about peace than many books I had read before. The funny thing is, the outside world didn't change at all when the sun went down. The same trees stood in the courtyard. The same walls surrounded the temple. The same sky stretched above us. What changed was the invitation that the night carried, like a note slipped under the door of your awareness. It said, "You've done enough for today. Now it's time to be, not to perform." That's the invitation your own nights quietly offer, even in a small apartment or a busy city. You don't need a physical monastery when you realize the night itself is trying to play that role for you. Zen is simply the art of accepting that invitation instead of pretending you didn't hear it. The problem is that most of us bring the marketplace mindset into the monastery of the night. We lie down and still act as if we are in the middle of a negotiation, trying to close deals with our past and future. You replay that awkward conversation, renegotiate decisions, and argue with people who aren't even in the room. It's like sitting inside a quiet temple and opening a loud street market on the floor, right between the cushions. No wonder sleep feels so far away. The temple is there, but we've filled it with stalls and noise. Zen doesn't shame you for this. It just shows you that you're allowed to close those stalls at night. You're allowed to let the marketplace rest without going bankrupt as a human being. Think about how we talk about nights in everyday life. I've got to survive tonight. I hate nighttime. Night makes everything worse. These phrases slowly teach your nervous system to expect danger every time the sun sets. Your body starts to associate darkness with threat, even when you're lying in a safe bed. Zen invites you to build a new vocabulary, a new story about what night means. Instead of, "I have to survive another night," it becomes, "I am entering my inner temple." Instead of, "Night makes everything worse," it becomes, "Night reveals what I didn't hear during the noise of the day." Little by little, your biology starts listening to the story you tell about the dark. One very practical thing you can do is treat the first minutes of night like a sacred transition, not a random blur. Most people go from bright screen to bed in less than 5 minutes, as if sprinting from a concert into a meditation hall. No wonder the mind feels shocked and confused, like someone flipped the lights off in the middle of a conversation. What if, instead, you gave yourself a small bridge between day and night? Maybe you dim the lights, speak more softly, walk slower, as if you were entering a library you respect. In Zen temples, the way people move at night is different. More deliberate, more gentle. You can copy that energy at home, and your nervous system will understand the message. Night, from a Zen perspective, is when the soul finally gets a chance to talk without shouting. During the day, it speaks in tiny whispers, but you're busy answering emails, paying bills, solving problems. At night, when all the external voices quiet a bit, your inner voice finally becomes audible. Sometimes that voice brings sadness. Sometimes it brings gratitude. Sometimes it brings questions you avoided for months. This is why nights feel heavy for many people. They confuse the arrival of truth with the presence of danger. Zen doesn't ask you to be afraid of what appears at night. It invites you to listen with kindness, not to analyze everything, but to simply acknowledge, "Yes, I hear you," and then let the heart rest. If you think about it, every living being respects the rhythm of night and day, except us humans. Birds settle on branches. Plants close their flowers. The world quietly agrees to turn the volume down. We're the only ones trying to keep the sun alive through screens and neon lights at 1ABU8 I20. Zen gently reminds us that we are not separate from nature, no matter how many apps we install. Your body is still wired like a forest creature. It understands sunrise and sunset better than deadlines. When you allow your life to sync even a little bit more with natural light and darkness, stress begins to loosen its grip, and night stops being an accident and starts being part of the design of your peace. You don't need to move to the countryside or buy a cabin in the mountains to feel this. Even in a noisy city, there are small signs that the world is winding down when night arrives. Traffic may slow a little. Shops close their doors. Voices on the street become fewer and farther between. You can choose to notice these small shifts and let them be your bells, calling you into your inner temple. Some people like to mark this with a simple action, closing the curtains fully, lighting a candle, or even whispering a small phrase like, "The day is done." It might sound silly at first, but your subconscious listens to these gestures. They tell the deeper layers of your mind that the marketplace is closing for now. In Buddhist teachings, rest isn't seen as laziness, it's seen as wisdom. A mind that never rests becomes confused, reactive, and easily lost in its own stories. Think of a lake after a storm. The water is muddy, the surface choppy, and you can't see anything clearly. But if the wind calms and nobody throws stones, the lake slowly becomes transparent again. The night is your invitation to let the winds of your day finally calm down. Zen asks only this: stop throwing more stones into the lake with new worries at midnight. Clarity comes not from effort, but from letting the water settle by itself. I know it's tempting to use the night to catch up on what you didn't resolve during the day. You might start planning tomorrow in obsessive detail, rehearsing conversations, or replaying mistakes in high definition. It feels productive in the moment, like you're being responsible and staying in control. But Zen would ask you a simple, disarming question. Is this actually helping, or just exhausting you more? Most of the time, late-night overthinking is like trying to fix a car while you're driving it at full speed. The night was meant to be the garage, the place where you park, turn off the engine, and let the machine cool. If you learn to trust that some problems can wait until morning, you're already practicing Zen without realizing it. A practical idea is to choose one small sentence that becomes your night mantra, something that matches this new view. It could be something like, "Nothing urgent belongs in my bed," or "Night is my temple of rest." Every time your mind tries to drag you back into the marketplace, you gently repeat that sentence. You're not fighting your thoughts with force. You're simply reminding yourself of the role the night plays. Over time, your brain begins to associate darkness with that mantra and the state that comes with it. This is how habits are built. One tiny, repeated choice that slowly rewires your internal map. Zen loves these small, humble practices that look simple on the outside, but move mountains on the inside. There's also something deeply humbling about remembering that while you sleep, the world keeps turning without your control. Emails will remain in inboxes. Problems will pause in the same place. And other people's opinions of you won't change at 3 a.m. NPM. We forget that the universe survived billions of years before we started worrying about tomorrow's tasks. Zen uses this as a gentle reminder. You are important, but you are not the axis of all existence. Letting the night take over is a way of bowing to something bigger than your to-do list. It's like saying, "I have done my part for today. Now life can do what it does while I rest. And that kind of surrender is one of the most powerful medicines for an overworked heart. As you start to see night not as an enemy, but as a quiet teacher, your relationship with sleep begins to change naturally. You stop going to bed like a soldier entering a war and start going like a student entering a classroom. Not a harsh classroom with tests and grades, but one where the lesson is simply learning how to be. You begin to lie down, not asking, "Will I fail to sleep again?" but whispering, "What will the night show me today?" Sometimes it will show you fatigue, sometimes emotions, sometimes peaceful emptiness. All of them are part of the curriculum of being human, nothing to be ashamed of. And just like that, sleep becomes less of a test and more of a side effect of deep acceptance. Little by little, every night becomes a small retreat, even if you never leave your room. You may still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes. That's part of being alive, not a sign of failure, but instead of panicking, you remember, I'm still inside my inner monastery. I can just sit here and breathe. You might look at the ceiling, listen to the sounds, and feel your body supported, just like monks in their wooden rooms. In that simple awareness, minutes lose their sharp edges, and time stops feeling like an enemy. Even wakefulness becomes less threatening, because you're no longer measuring your value in hours slept. And, paradoxically, it's often when you stop obsessing over sleep that sleep gently returns like an old friend. Soon, we'll go deeper into how to quiet the noisy marketplace mind that refuses to close at night. We'll talk about that overflowing teacup of thoughts you've been carrying to bed, and how Zen suggests you handle it. But for now, I want you to just hold this one new picture. Night as your hidden monastery, not your private battlefield. Let that image sit quietly somewhere at the back of your mind as you move through your evenings. Because once your heart understands this, the way you lie down at the end of the day will never feel quite the same. And when we talk about that teacup next, you'll see exactly why the night needed this new meaning first. It's only when you respect the temple that you're ready to finally empty what you've been spilling on its floor. There's a famous Zen image that explains exactly why your mind feels so overloaded at night. A professor once visited a Zen master to learn about Zen, full of theories and opinions. The master kept pouring tea into the professor's cup until it overflowed, spilling all over the table. The professor shouted, "It's full! No more will go in." And the master calmly replied, "Exactly. Your mind at bedtime is usually that teacup, already full, but still trying to receive more. All day long you pour news, problems, notifications, worries, and expectations into it without pause. Then you lay in bed and wonder why peace has nowhere to sit. Think about how you use your phone. When storage is almost full, the device slows down, freezes, and refuses to install new apps. You don't scream at the phone for being weak. You know it needs cleaning. But when your own mind starts freezing with anxiety and racing thoughts, you call yourself broken. Zen would say, with a half smile, "My friend, your mental storage is just full. That's all." It doesn't mean you're damaged. It means the cup is overflowing. The solution isn't to hate the cup, but to learn how to empty it with kindness. During the day, you can get away with an overflowing mind because movement hides the mess. You jump from task to task like someone hopping between stones on a rushing river. You don't notice how noisy the water is when you're busy not falling in. But at night, when you finally stop jumping, you suddenly hear the roar you've been ignoring. Every unfinished email, every strange look someone gave you, every "I'll think about this later" comes back. It's not that the night created these thoughts. It simply stopped running long enough for you to hear them. That's why it feels like your brain turns on right when you lie down. I once worked with a man who described his mind as a browser with 50 tabs open, all playing music. He wasn't lazy or weak. He was simply never taught how to close tabs. He believed that to be responsible, he had to keep every problem active in consciousness. Zen gently showed him that responsibility is not the same as constant mental chewing. You can write something down, schedule a time to handle it, and then let the mind rest. After a few weeks of practicing this, he said, "My nights finally feel like a room, not a server farm." His problems didn't disappear, but his mental teacup stopped overflowing every single evening. Notice how often you mentally revisit the same situation, as if repetition would finally fix it. You replay that conversation with your boss, adjusting your answers in a fantasy version of the past. You rewatch an argument with someone you love, hoping that this time they say what you need. The brain thinks it's searching for safety, but it's really just stirring the same pot. Zen doesn't tell you, "Never think about these things." It just asks, "Is this useful right now?" At 2 a.m., with the lights off and your body begging for rest, the answer is usually no. That's the moment to practice emptying, not polishing, the contents of your teacup. A simple, powerful way to empty that cup is what I like to call a mind dump. Before bed, you sit for 5 to 10 minutes with a notebook. Nothing fancy, just honest. You write down everything that's still knocking on the door of your awareness. Tasks, worries, ideas, even random thoughts like, "I should fix that broken drawer someday." You're not solving anything. You're just moving it from your head to a safe external place. It's like telling your mind, "You're not forgetting this. It's stored here for tomorrow." The mind, finally reassured, doesn't have to guard it all night long. Think of it like cleaning a kitchen at the end of the day. You wouldn't leave every pan, plate, and crumb sitting on the counter and then try to cook breakfast. Yet mentally, many people do exactly that. They leave the day's dishes piling up in the sink of the mind. Then they walk into the kitchen at night and wonder why it feels claustrophobic. Your mind dump is a quiet, gentle cleanup, not a deep renovation. You're not repainting the walls, you're just making sure you can walk through the space without tripping. And that alone already changes the way your night feels. Some people resist this idea and say, "If I start writing, I'll think even more." But the truth is, you're already thinking more than enough. The thoughts are just swirling aimlessly. Putting them on paper gives them a home that isn't your nervous system. It's like taking anxious guests out of your living room and giving them a waiting room outside. You can tell them, "I'll see you in the morning at 9 a.m. I promise." Zen loves this kind of clear, simple promise. The mind responds well to structure. When your thoughts trust that you'll return to them, they stop banging on the door so loudly. Another way your teacup overflows is with information that doesn't belong to your life right now. News, drama, online arguments, other people's problems. These all pour into your mind daily. You carry the weight of entire countries, celebrities, and strangers you'll never meet. It's like trying to drink tea with 20 different flavors at once. Eventually, it just tastes like stress. Zen isn't asking you to ignore the world, but to choose when and how you drink from it. Especially at night, your mind doesn't need global headlines. It needs local kindness. Reducing screens and heavy content before bed is not weakness, it's wisdom. Imagine you had a friend who was exhausted, shaking, and close to tears. Would you sit them down and start reading out the worst news of the day? Would you show them arguments from comment sections and remind them of every unfinished task. Of course not. You'd offer them something warm, quiet, and safe. Yet that's exactly how many of us treat ourselves at night without noticing. Zen invites you to be a better friend to yourself. Protect your inner space before sleep, not by living in denial, but by choosing a time and place for heavy topics that isn't your pillow. There's also the weight of unmade decisions sloshing around in your mental cup. Should I leave this job? Should I end this relationship? Should I move cities? These are not questions that get answered well in the dark, between yawns and anxiety. Zen would say, kindly, big decisions deserve the light of day and a steady mind. You can acknowledge the question at night without forcing an answer. Write it down, breathe with it, and give it an appointment for tomorrow when you're clearer. That simple act turns a storm into a cloud waiting in the morning sky. You might be thinking, but my thoughts don't listen, they just keep talking. That's true. Thoughts are like radio stations that don't turn off just because you're tired. But you can choose whether you put the speaker right next to your ear or leave it in another room. Emptying the cup is not about destroying the radio. It's about lowering the volume. Techniques like writing, gentle breathing, and simple mantras are just volume knobs. You still hear a bit of noise, but it no longer drowns out everything else. And that's usually all you need for sleep to start approaching. Sometimes the cup is full of self-criticism disguised as reflection. You call it thinking about my day, but in reality, you're just beating yourself up with better vocabulary. You judge everything you did, compare yourself to imagined perfection, and issue harsh sentences. No wonder your mind refuses to rest. It's on trial, and the judge never goes home. Zen doesn't deny your mistakes, but it refuses to confuse growth with self-violence. At night, reflection should sound more like, what did I learn today? Rather than, how did I fail? That simple shift empties the cup of poison and replaces it with medicine. One exercise I often suggest is the 3 grains of gratitude practice. Before sleep, you name just 3 things from the day that you're quietly grateful for. They don't have to be big: a good cup of coffee, a kind message, surviving a rough moment. This doesn't erase your problems or magically fix your life, but it adds a few drops of warmth into a cup that is usually filled only with worry. The brain slowly learns that not all thinking at night has to be negative or catastrophic. And that, over time, changes the flavor of your inner dialogue. There's also the illusion that if you stop thinking, you'll lose control of everything, as if worry were some kind of magic rope holding your life together. But notice how many things turn out fine on days you forgot to worry about them. Zen points out this simple truth. Worry doesn't prevent pain. It just adds suffering in advance. Emptying the cup is an act of humility, admitting that you were never controlling as much as you thought. Instead of gripping every detail mentally, you allow life to breathe a little on its own. And strangely, things often flow more smoothly when you loosen your grip. The beautiful part is that you don't have to empty the cup completely every night. Even pouring out just a little can make a huge difference in how heavy it feels. 1 page of writing, 1 small mantra, 1 honest breath is already an act of Zen. You're training your mind gently to trust that it doesn't have to carry everything until dawn. Over weeks and months, this becomes a new habit, a new way of ending the day. Your bed stops being the place where your teacup spills and becomes the place where it rests on the table, ready to be refilled tomorrow, but not drowning you tonight. Soon, we'll go beyond the teacup and look at something even more radical. Not just emptying the mind, but learning to sit beside it like a quiet friend by a flowing river. You'll see how Zen teaches you to watch thoughts drift past without jumping into everyone. For now, it's enough to realize that your suffering at night isn't proof of weakness. It's often just overflow. Once you learn how to pour out gently, sleep has a place to sit beside you. And in the next part of our journey, we'll explore how to watch the river of thoughts without being swept away. Because an emptying cup is powerful, but a calm observer beside the cup is something even deeper. There's a moment in every spiritual journey when someone finally says, "Okay, but how do I stop thinking so much?" Zen's quiet answer is, you don't. You stop fighting the thoughts. Instead of wrestling with every idea that passes through your mind, you change seats. You move from the middle of the traffic to the sidewalk, where you can watch the cars go by. The thoughts keep coming, but you're no longer in the driver's seat of every one of them. This shift sounds small, yet it changes your entire relationship with the night. Because suddenly, your mind can be busy, and you can still be peaceful. Imagine you're standing beside a river at dusk. Leaves, branches, and little pieces of debris drift by on the surface of the water. You don't jump in and grab each leaf, demanding to know where it came from and where it's going. You simply notice. There goes one leaf. There goes another. The river keeps flowing. Zen says your thoughts are exactly like that river, especially at night. The problem isn't that the river flows. Rivers are supposed to flow. The problem is that you keep diving in after every leaf as if your life depended on it. When you lie in bed and a thought appears, "I forgot to reply that message," you usually do one of two things. You either chase it, start planning, rewriting, worrying, or you try to shove it away, yelling, "Stop thinking," inside your head. Both ways keep you stuck in the river, wet and shivering at midnight. The third option, the Zen option, is to see the thought, acknowledge it, and let it float downstream. You might even mentally whisper, "Not for now," like you're kindly closing a shop door. No drama, no war, just a gentle redirection. You stay on the shore, dry, watching the water move. I remember one retreat where we practiced this for what felt like the longest night of my life. We sat in silence, and my brain decided that was the perfect time to replay every embarrassing moment since childhood. At first, I fought them. "Stop! Focus! You're supposed to be Zen right now." The more I resisted, the louder the memories became, like kids banging on a locked door. Then the teacher quietly said, "Don't push your thoughts away. Bow to them, then watch them leave." So I tried it. I greeted each embarrassing memory like an awkward old friend passing on the street, and, to my surprise, they started visiting for shorter and shorter moments. This is the secret. Observation without ownership. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," you begin to notice, "Anxiety is arising." Instead of "I'm a mess," it becomes, "Messy thoughts are passing through." One feels like a prison sentence. The other feels like weather you can wait out. You don't blame the sky for clouds. You accept that clouds come and go. Zen invites you to treat mental storms in exactly the same way. Even at night, especially at night when storms love to show up uninvited. Think of a train station late in the evening. Trains arrive, stay for a moment, then leave again, heading to countless destinations. You don't chase every train down the tracks just because it pulled into your platform. Yet mentally, that's what we often do. Every thought that enters becomes a journey we must ride. What if, instead, you sat on the bench and watched them come and go? I could board the "what if everything goes wrong" train, but tonight I'll just let it pass. You stay on the platform, and slowly the whole station starts to feel safer. At first, watching thoughts like this can feel almost impossible. You're so used to immediately believing everything your mind says. If a thought whispers, "You're failing," you don't question it. You just wear it like a heavy coat. Zen practice begins when you ask, "Is this a passing thought or an eternal truth?" Most of the time, it's just a habit, an old recording with dramatic background music. Noticing that it's a recording doesn't erase it instantly, but it weakens its spell. And every time you see the trick, you become a little freer. A very simple exercise you can do in bed is the cloud practice. Close your eyes and imagine the dark behind your eyelids as a vast night sky. Every thought that appears about work, love, money, health becomes a little cloud drifting by. You mentally label it gently: worry, planning, memory, fantasy, and then you let it move on. You're not arguing with the cloud. You're not trying to explode it. You're just seeing it for what it is: temporary, moving, not the whole sky. Over time, you start trusting the sky more than you fear the clouds. The beautiful thing is that the body understands this way of seeing very quickly. When you stop wrestling with thoughts, your shoulders drop a little on their own. Your jaw softens, your breathing slowly deepens, even if your mind is still busy. This tells your nervous system, we're safe, even if the river of thoughts is flowing fast. Sleep loves that kind of message. It's like a green light. You're no longer waiting for the mind to be perfectly empty before resting. You're just learning how to rest beside a mind that's allowed to be imperfect. Sometimes people say, "But if I don't control my thoughts, won't they get worse?" It's a fair fear, especially if you've felt overwhelmed for years. But watch what happens when you try to control them. Usually they get louder, not quieter. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more force you use, the harder it pops up. Zen's approach is to let the ball float at the surface while you swim around it. Thoughts are allowed to be there, but they're not allowed to dictate your every move. That tiny shift in power changes everything about your nights. One story tells of a monk who complained, "Master, my mind will not stop." The master replied, "Show me this mind that doesn't stop." The monk paused and said, "I can't. It's just thoughts." The master smiled. "If you can't catch it, why do you let it catch you?" That's the trick. You've never actually seen a thought. You've only felt its impact. When you realize that thoughts are more like echoes than bricks, they start feeling lighter. You don't have to carry every echo into your dreams. If you want something practical, try this. Pick one anchor to return to. It might be the feeling of your breath in your chest or the weight of your body on the mattress. When a thought grabs you and drags you down the river, don't panic. The moment you notice, gently bring your attention back to that anchor. No guilt, no drama. It's like returning home after wandering in a dream. You'll do this dozens of times in one night, and that's okay. That is the practice. Each return is a small act of freedom, a quiet, "I choose the shore again." You can even make this playful instead of heavy. Imagine your thoughts as little characters walking across a stage in your mind. One comes out wearing a suit labeled "Bills," another in a costume labeled "What If," another with "Past Mistakes" painted on their shirt. Instead of letting them hijack the show, you sit in the audience and just watch. Sometimes you'll laugh at how dramatic they are. Sometimes you'll feel compassion for them. In both cases, you remember, I'm the one in the chair, not the actor losing it on stage. and your bed becomes the theater seat where you finally stop being dragged into every scene. Over time, this observer position becomes more natural than the old habit of constant fusion. You start catching yourself in the middle of a spiral and thinking, "Oh, there I go again." Not with hatred, but with a kind smile, like a parent watching a child tell the same story for the 10th time. That kindness is crucial. Without it, observation turns into cold judgment. Zen is not asking you to be a security guard, stiff and suspicious of every thought. It's asking you to be a friendly host, greeting each thought at the door and deciding if it stays for tea or keeps walking. At night, most of them are better off just passing through. You might notice something subtle happening as you practice this night after night. The river of thoughts is still there, but it starts flowing a bit slower. The same worries show up, but they don't dig in their claws as deeply. You fall asleep sooner, not because your mind is empty, but because you're less entangled. Even when you wake up in the middle of the night, the panic response is weaker. You think, the river's noisy again, and you return to your breath, your anchor, your shore. That's how peace quietly sneaks back into a life that once felt ruled by thinking. And here's the most surprising part. This skill doesn't just help you sleep. It starts changing your days too. When stress hits at work or at home, you'll recognize the same choice. Dive into every thought or stand on the shore. You'll feel that gap between stimulus and response widening just a little. In that space, you can choose patience instead of attack, curiosity instead of fear. Night practice becomes daytime wisdom, without you forcing it. And that's where Zen begins to weave through your entire life. Not just your bedtime. Soon, we'll move from the river of thoughts to something even more concrete and comforting. We'll talk about the body itself, how your muscles, breath, and posture can become allies in your spiritual sleep practice. Because watching the river is powerful, but learning to relax the boat you live in multiplies that power. For now, just remember, you don't have to stop the river tonight. You only need to step onto the shore, even for a few breaths, and see that you're not the water. Once you feel that truth, even for a moment, the night stops being a prison and starts becoming a path. And the next step on that path is already waiting in the quiet language of your own body. There's a quiet truth that most people only discover after years of insomnia. The mind doesn't calm down because the body still thinks it's daytime. Your thoughts are racing, yes, but your shoulders are also locked. Your jaw is clenched. Your chest is tight. It's like trying to park a car while your foot is still pressing the accelerator. Zen never separates mind and body. They're like two friends walking the same path. If one is tense, the other can't relax fully, no matter how hard you try to sleep. So tonight, instead of fighting your thoughts, we begin by befriending your body. Imagine you've carried a heavy backpack all day without taking it off. Even when you finally reach home, your muscles are still shaped around the weight. That's exactly what happens with stress in your body. You close your laptop, put your phone down, but your nervous system is still holding the backpack. Zen would say, you left the office, but the office didn't leave your shoulders. The first step is noticing where that invisible backpack is sitting right now. Neck, jaw, shoulders, stomach. Your body's always telling the story of your day. Think about how you fall onto your bed at night. Do you actually lie down, or do you crash like someone who missed the last step on the stairs? Most people collapse into bed already curled around their worries. Hands tight, face slightly frowning, breath shallow like they're hiding from life. The body doesn't understand bedtime. It understands posture and breath. If you lie down like you're bracing for impact, it assumes danger is still here. No wonder it refuses to drift into deep, trusting sleep. A simple starting point is what I call the scan of honesty. You lie on your back or side, close your eyes, and gently scan your body from head to toe. Not to judge, not to fix, but just to see what's actually there. Jaw, tight or soft. Neck, stiff or loose. Belly, held or relaxed. This small act of awareness is like switching on a light in a room you've been walking through in the dark. Once you've seen the tension, you can invite it to release, not command it. You quietly tell your shoulders, "You've worked enough today. You can drop a little now." You let your jaw unclench, maybe even letting your mouth open slightly, like someone who fell asleep watching TV. You soften your belly, allowing it to rise and fall freely with your breath. You don't need to relax everything perfectly. That's just another pressure. You just relax 5% more, then another 5%, like slowly loosening the lid of a jar. The body listens to gentle instructions much better than to aggressive orders. Let me tell you about a woman who swore her problem was overthinking. When we talked, she kept saying, "My brain never stops. My thoughts are insane at night." But when I asked her to lie down and describe her body, she realized something surprising. Her fists were clenched so hard, her nails marked her palms. Her shoulders were practically kissing her ears, and her stomach felt like a knotted rope. Her mind wasn't the only one awake. Her whole body thought it was in a battlefield. Once she learned to relax her muscles, her thoughts suddenly had less fuel. There's a Zen saying that you can't calm the mind while standing in a burning house. Your body is that house. If every muscle is screaming danger, the mind assumes there's something to fight. So instead of starting at the top with your thinking, you start from the bottom with your breathing and posture. You lie down like someone who trusts the floor won't disappear beneath them. You let the mattress hold your weight completely, as if you're giving it the burden of your day. For a few seconds, you let yourself be heavy without apologizing for it. A practical exercise you can try tonight is the stone in the lake technique. Picture your body as if it were slowly sinking into a warm, still lake. First your heels sink in, then your calves, then your hips, then your back, then your head. You imagine gravity as a friend, gently pulling you downward into safety. You stop trying to hold yourself up, and you let the bed do 100% of the work. Every exhale is like surrendering another piece of tension to the water. You don't fight the lake. You allow it to carry you without effort. Breathing is the simplest, most ancient tool, and yet people underestimate it completely. They think, "I already breathe. That can't be the problem." But pay attention. Sleep-deprived breathing is often shallow and rushed, like someone hiding from a predator. Zen breathing is the opposite. Slow, deep, and honest, as if you finally admitted, "I want to rest." Try this. Inhale gently through your nose to a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale through your mouth to a count of 6. Do this 10 times, not as a competition, but as a ritual. By the 5th breath, your nervous system starts getting the message. We're safe now. You don't need fancy equipment to reset your body. Your hands are already sacred tools. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. Feel which one rises more when you breathe. If only the chest moves, it usually means stress is driving the car. If the belly rises, you're closer to that calm, deep body breathing that Zen practice loves. Gently invite the belly to move more, like you're inflating a small balloon in your abdomen. It's a childlike movement, and that's exactly what makes it healing. Sometimes the body holds stories the mind refuses to admit. That knot in your throat may be a conversation you avoided. The weight in your chest might be grief you never gave words to. The tension in your stomach could be fear about money, love, or the future. Zen doesn't force those stories to come out all at once. It simply gives them room by releasing the physical armor around them. When the body softens, emotions finally have space to breathe instead of suffocating you at midnight. You might notice that when your body starts to relax, your mind forms an alliance with it. Thoughts slow down, not because you won, but because the alarm bells are quieter. Your brain receives a new message from your muscles and breath. We survived today. It's a simple sentence, but at night, it's incredibly powerful. Even if everything isn't perfect, you still made it to this bed, to this moment. Zen loves that kind of humble truth. It doesn't need drama to recognize victory. Surviving one more day is already proof of quiet strength. There's also something almost sacred about creating a small bedtime ritual for your body. It could be stretching your neck slowly, rolling your shoulders back a few times, maybe massaging your own hands or feet for a minute, thanking them for carrying you all day, perhaps lighting a candle or dimming the lights 10 minutes earlier than usual. You're telling your body, we're transitioning now, instead of abruptly slamming from chaos into silence. Even animals stretch and shake themselves out after stress. They don't just freeze. Your ritual is your way of shaking off the day with a touch of grace. Think of your bedroom as a small temple instead of a storage room for your worries. If your bed is the altar, your body is the main offering you place there each night. Would you throw it there, crumpled, tense, and buzzing with leftover arguments and notifications? Or would you arrive with a bit more presence, like someone entering a sacred space? You don't need incense or mantras in Sanskrit to do this. Just a conscious pause before lying down already changes the energy of the room. You turn sleep from an accident into a ceremony. Humor also lives in the body, and it's surprisingly therapeutic. Sometimes, when you notice your shoulders up to your ears, try exaggerating it a bit. Lift them as high as you can. Hold for a second, then drop them with a sigh. Do it 3 times, almost like a cartoon character shaking off a scare. Your nervous system understands this playful signal and starts to unwind. Who said spiritual practice had to be stiff and serious all the time? A smile in the dark can be as holy as a prayer. Little by little, as you repeat these body practices night after night, something shifts. Sleep stops being a battle and becomes more like returning to the ocean after a long day on land. Your body recognizes the path more quickly, like a well-worn trail through a forest. The muscles remember how to soften. The breath remembers how to deepen. You start to feel that you're not forcing sleep, you're allowing it. That's a very Zen distinction. Forcing is ego, allowing is wisdom. And your body, surprisingly, has always known the difference. Soon, we'll step into an even more intimate territory. The quiet stories your heart tells you in the dark. Because once the body has softened and the mind has stepped onto the shore, something tender wakes up inside. Old emotions, forgotten dreams, and silent fears start rising. Not to frighten you, but to be seen. The next part of our journey is learning how to meet those visitors with kindness instead of panic. For now, your only task is simple. Let your body be on your side, not your enemy. When the lights go out, once you feel that alliance, the night becomes less of a threat and more of a teacher. And what it teaches next goes straight to the center of who you really are. There's a moment usually when the lights are off and the world is quiet, when the real visitors arrive. Not emails, not notifications, but emotions that you manage to dodge all day. Sadness pulls up a chair, anxiety paces the room, loneliness sits at the edge of the bed. You might think, this is the worst time for you to show up. But for them, it's the first time you've actually slowed down enough to hear them. Zen doesn't see these visitors as enemies. It sees them as messengers that hate crowds. They wait for the quiet of night to finally knock on your door. Most people try to win a wrestling match against these feelings. They tell themselves, I shouldn't feel this. I have to be strong. I'll think about this tomorrow. But the feelings don't speak the language of should and later. They speak the language of presence. I'm here now. The more you push them away, the louder they knock and the heavier your chest feels. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you press, the stronger it pushes back. Soon, your whole night becomes a struggle with something that just wanted 5 honest minutes. Imagine your inner world as a small, quiet house. Every emotion that shows up at night is a guest at your door. You don't have to make each one a permanent roommate. But if you pretend they don't exist, they start rattling the windows. Zen invites you to do something surprisingly simple and brave. Open the door, not with a party, not with fireworks, just with a calm. I see you. Come in for a moment. Often, that alone softens both the emotion and the tension in your body. Let's say sadness comes in wearing the face of something you lost. A relationship, a dream, a version of yourself that didn't survive this year. If you keep saying, I'm fine, it doesn't matter, you're basically turning your back on it. Sadness doesn't leave. It just becomes heavier, like fog thickening in the dark. But if you whisper, yeah, this did hurt, didn't it? Something shifts. Tears might come, or maybe just a soft ache. But there's also relief. The house of your heart finally has someone home to answer the doorbell. One night, a man told me he felt weak because he cried every time he lay down. During the day, he wore armor, jokes, productivity, perfection. At night, the armor fell off, and all the unshed tears lined up like children after school. He thought that meant he was failing spiritually. But what was really happening is that his heart trusted the darkness more than the daylight. We talked about letting those tears be part of his practice, not a sign of defeat. Within a month, he still cried sometimes, but he slept better because he stopped fighting himself. Anxiety is a particularly noisy guest. It doesn't knock. It bursts in talking about every possible disaster in vivid detail. It loves phrases like, what if, and imagine if, and you know what could happen. The instinct is to argue back, to debate each scenario until 3 a.m. Zen offers a different response. You're worried. I can feel that. Come sit down, but we're not planning the apocalypse tonight. You acknowledge the energy without feeding its story. It's like sitting next to a hyperactive friend and gently taking away the microphone. A practical way to do this is to give your emotions a physical place. When worry comes, you imagine it sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. You don't merge with it. You don't kick it out into a storm either. You just see it clearly. There you are, worry. I know you're trying to protect me. Maybe you place sadness on the other side, like another guest. Suddenly, instead of being inside you like a storm, they're in front of you, like people you're talking to. That tiny shift gives you room to breathe. Sometimes emotions appear not as clear feelings, but as heaviness. You lie in bed and say, I don't even know what I feel. I just feel off. Your chest feels tight, your stomach restless, your mind blurry. In those moments, don't force yourself to come up with a label. Zen isn't obsessed with naming everything. It cares more about contact. You can gently put a hand on your chest and say, "Whatever this is, I'm here with you." That simple promise can be more healing than a perfect diagnosis. You might have learned early in life that emotions make you too much. Maybe someone told you, "Stop crying, be strong," or "You're overreacting." So your nervous system decided that feeling deeply was dangerous. At night, though, that lid can't stay on forever. Pressure always finds a way out. Zen at night is like gently learning a new rule. Here, in this bed, I don't have to be impressive. You don't need to perform calmness. You can actually feel what's true. And that authenticity is what your soul has been craving. One exercise you can try is the nighttime interview. When a strong emotion arrives, you imagine sitting across from it like a wise interviewer. You ask, "What are you trying to protect? What are you afraid would happen if you left?" You won't always get a clear answer, but sometimes surprising insights show up. Fear might say, "I'm just trying to make sure you're prepared." Sadness might whisper, "I wanted you to notice what still matters to you." Even anger might admit, "I'm here because your boundaries were ignored." Notice how the tone changes when you become curious instead of hostile. You're not yelling, "Why are you here again?" at your own heart. You're more like a patient friend asking, "Okay, talk to me. What's really going on?" Curiosity softens inner conflict faster than harshness ever could. Zen thrives in that kind of gentle questioning. It's not about attacking, it's about seeing. And once something is really seen, it doesn't have to shout as loudly to be heard. That's when emotions stop hijacking your whole night and become visitors who come and go. Sometimes people ask, "But if I let myself feel everything, won't I drown?" It's a real fear, especially if you've spent years holding everything in. The key is to remember, you're not jumping into an endless ocean without a raft. Your breath, your body, your awareness, they are your raft. You can touch the emotion, feel it, then come back to the anchor of your breathing. A few waves might wash over you, but you're not staying under. You're practicing entering and leaving the water on purpose. There's a simple pattern you can follow when emotions rise at night. Notice, name, nurture. First, you notice, something is here. I feel it in my chest or stomach. Then you name it softly, if you can. This feels like fear, or this feels like grief. Finally, you nurture it. You place a hand over that area and breathe, as if you're comforting a child. You don't need long speeches or fancy affirmations, just a quiet presence, a feeling of, "I'm not abandoning you this time." Your heart has been waiting for that kind of loyalty from you. Humor can gently enter this space too, in a loving way. Sometimes, when my own mind dramatizes a situation at night, I imagine a soap opera narrator. In tonight's episode of Everything is Falling Apart, our hero forgets to send one email. Suddenly, the intensity drops a little, and I chuckle in the dark. I still respect the emotion, but I stop worshiping its drama as absolute truth. Zen doesn't kill humor. It cleans it up so it heals instead of hides. A tiny smile can loosen a very tight knot inside. As you allow emotions to visit without controlling the night, something subtle changes. You start to notice that none of them last forever. Fear rises, peaks, then gradually fades, like a wave losing intensity as it reaches the sand. Sadness comes in heavy, then softens into a quiet tiredness, then into sleep. You realize through experience, not theory, that you are larger than whatever you feel. You are the house, not just the guests. And that realization is one of the most liberating discoveries a human can make. With time, your bed can become the safest place for your emotions to be seen. Not the place where you're ambushed, but the place where the truth finally takes off its shoes and rests. You don't have to fix your whole life between midnight and 2 a.m. You only have to stop exiling the parts of you that are already exhausted. As you do this, sleep begins to feel less like escape and more like a continuation of this kindness. You fall asleep not by running away from yourself, but by finally being on your own side. And that changes the way you wake up in the morning, too. He knows you probably didn't press play tonight just because you like Zen. Most likely, you're tired in a way sleep hasn't been fixing. Maybe your body lies down, but your mind keeps scrolling through worries you never subscribed to. You've tried the usual tricks, counting breaths, changing pillows, one more video, one more podcast, and still, there you are, wide awake, wondering why your brain won't cooperate. Here's the paradox. The harder you try to force rest, the further it runs from you. Most people are told that insomnia is just a sleep problem. Take a pill, close your eyes, drown your thoughts under noise, and hope for the best. But what if your mind isn't broken at all? What if it's actually doing its job, begging you to finally listen instead of constantly distracting yourself? Tonight, you're not going to fight your thoughts. You're going to walk with them, hand in hand, until they're ready to sit down beside you and rest. He speaks as a mentor, but not from some perfect mountain where nothing ever bothers him. He also knows what it's like to stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m., to replay old conversations, to worry about money, health, relationships, the future that never stops coming. He's been through nights where the pillow was soaked with thoughts, not just with sweat. That's why these 25 Zen stories aren't just nice teachings thrown in your direction. They're the same kind of keys he used to quietly unlock his own restless mind. You've probably noticed how most sleep content tries to knock you out without teaching you anything. Soft sounds, vague affirmations, empty phrases you forget by morning. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't change why you can't rest. Tonight will be different. These stories were chosen not just to calm you down, but to help you recognize yourself inside them, so that even half asleep, some part of you is saying, "Wait, that's me. That's exactly how I live." Here's the counterintuitive part. The goal isn't to make you stop thinking. Zen doesn't want to turn your mind off like a broken lamp. Instead, it invites you to see how you're thinking. The patterns, the stories, the automatic reactions. Because once you see the pattern, it starts losing its grip. You don't have to wrestle every thought to the ground. You just stop believing each one is the whole truth. Rest doesn't appear when the mind is empty. It appears when the mind is finally at peace with itself. Each of the 25 stories you'll hear tonight comes with a quiet shock of recognition. A meditation student who can't stand his own mind. A samurai discovering that heaven and hell are inside his reactions. Waterfall, a thief disarmed not by force, but by kindness so unreasonable it breaks his heart. A poor man sitting under a tree that grants his wishes, and his self-sabotage. These tales sound ancient, but they're really about traffic, emails, arguments, and anxiety in the dark. Different costumes, same human heart. The quick reward is this. You don't have to remember every detail to benefit. While you listen, your conscious mind will follow the stories like a movie. Meanwhile, a deeper part of you will quietly absorb the shifts in perspective. You may not notice it now, but tomorrow, in some small, stressful moment, you'll react just a little differently. You'll pause where before you'd explode, breathe where before you'd panic. That's how inner peace actually enters a life, not with fireworks, but with tiny, repeated changes. He'll speak to you as if you're the only person in the room, not an audience, not a number in the algorithm, but one tired human being who deserves rest. He'll share analogies drawn from real life. Phones overheating with too many apps. Backpacks full of invisible weight. Rivers that want to carry you, but you're still clinging to the rocks. Simple images you won't need to study, because your mind will store them on its own. Later, when you're struggling again, they'll pop up like quiet reminders. Hey, remember? You don't have to carry all of this. If at any point you drift off while he's talking, that's not a failure. That's the point. These stories are built for deep rest, not for exams. You're allowed to miss the ending of a story because your body finally decided to trust the moment. You're allowed to wake up halfway through another one and feel strangely calm without knowing why. This isn't school. There's no test later. There's just you, your breath, and an old wisdom that's patient enough to repeat itself as many times as you need. So tonight, you're invited to do something very simple and very brave. Instead of trying to control your mind, you'll just let it sit down beside these stories and listen. Instead of fighting your thoughts, you'll watch how they soften when they're seen without judgment. With each tale, a little more tension will drain out of your shoulders, your jaw, your chest. You may arrive here feeling like a glass overflowing with worry and noise. But as the journey begins, you might just discover what happens when that glass slowly learns to become a lake. He sits on the cushion or lies in bed, and his mind behaves like a wild marketplace at noon. Thoughts shout over each other, old conversations replay. Imaginary arguments start and end in seconds. His body is exhausted, but his mind refuses to clock out. Anyone watching from the outside would think nothing is happening, but inside it feels like a storm that never got the memo to stop. And that's the first truth the wise mentor points out. The problem isn't that the mind moves. The problem is believing that movement will never end. The old Zen story of the meditation student explains this perfectly. One week, the student complains, "My meditation is horrible. I can't focus. My legs hurt. My thoughts won't stop." His teacher looks up calmly and says only 3 words, "It will pass." Days later, the student returns saying, "Now my practice is wonderful. I'm peaceful and clear. It's all amazing." The teacher answers with the same 3 words, "It will pass." The student finally understands that both the nightmare and the bliss are temporary guests in the same mind. The mentor likes to compare this to watching the weather. Nobody panics when it rains, thinking, "Well, that's it. It's rain forever now." People know the sky doesn't become the storm. Clouds roll in, clouds roll out, and the sky remains untouched behind it all. In the same way, the restless mind at 3 a.m. is just mental weather, not a permanent defect. When a person realizes this, they stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What's passing through me right now?" It's a much kinder question. He also knows that, in real life, this stormy mind shows up in very ordinary scenes. Like when someone lies in bed replaying a mistake from 10 years ago as if it happened yesterday. Or when they keep scrolling on their phone, hoping the next video will finally tire them out. Instead, the brain just gets more and more wired. The mentor doesn't judge this. He simply points out that the mind is doing what it was trained to do. Jump, protect, plan. It's loyal, just not very subtle. To make it practical, he invites the listener to picture their mind as a hyperactive puppy. If you've ever seen a puppy in a small room, you know the scene. It runs in circles, grabs random shoes, slides on the floor. You don't yell at a puppy for being a puppy. You create a bit more space and gently guide it. In the same way, instead of shouting internally, stop thinking. The person can widen their awareness with a simple question. What else is here besides these thoughts? Suddenly, they notice the pillow, the breath, the darkness, the quiet. There's a trick the mentor suggests that doesn't require any fancy technique. He says, when your mind won't sit still, don't try to lock it in a cell. Give it a gentle job. For example, they can silently count 10 breaths, feeling the air come in and out, or trace with attention the contact points of the body on the bed. The mind still moves, of course, but now it moves inside a simple task instead of running wild in every direction. It's like giving that puppy a chew toy instead of your favorite shoes. He remembers a time in his own life when his mind felt like that 24 hours a day. He was juggling bills, relationships, expectations, and a constant fear of failing at everything. Nighttime felt worse because the outer noise stopped and only the inner noise remained. Back then, he believed, honestly, that his mind was broken. Only much later did he realize it was simply overloaded, like a computer with too many apps open. The system didn't need to be thrown away. It needed space and a different way to be used. To make it even clearer, he uses the cell phone analogy. When a phone has 50 apps open, notifications pinging, low battery, and weak signal, nobody says, "This phone is evil." They close apps, charge the battery, maybe turn on airplane mode for a while. The human brain is not so different. The problem is that many people try to fall asleep while all the apps are open. Worries, plans, resentments, imaginary conversations. No wonder the mind spins. It's not a moral failure, it's just too many tabs. One very simple exercise he often recommends is what he calls the brain's download. Before bed, the person takes a notebook and writes down everything that's jumping inside their head. Tasks, fears, half-thoughts, even silly things. No need to be poetic, just honest. The paper becomes a temporary external hard drive. The mind sees, okay, this is stored somewhere. I don't need to rehearse it all night. It's surprisingly close to what happens in Zen stories. The student brings the chaos out into the open, and it loses some of its power. The mentor also likes to play with humor, because the restless mind hates to be laughed at. He tells the listener, have you noticed your mind always picks the worst time to bring up your most embarrassing memory? You're finally getting sleepy, and suddenly it says, remember that thing you did in 7th grade. By smiling at this, the person stops treating every thought as serious breaking news. The mind becomes more like a quirky friend than a dictator. And dictators lose a lot of control when people stop taking all their speeches seriously. At the same time, he doesn't pretend that people can just flip a switch and never struggle again. Some nights, the mind will be noisy, no matter how many breaths they count. On those nights, the phrase, "it will pass," becomes a kind of anchor. The person can repeat it gently, not as a magic spell, but as a reminder that no storm, internal or external, has ever lasted forever. Even the worst insomnia has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Seeing that arc makes the present moment more bearable. He also shows how this same restless mind shows up outside the bedroom. In traffic, at work, in conversations, the mind jumps ahead. finishes other people's sentences, assumes the worst. Someone sends a short message. We need to talk. And the mind writes an entire horror movie script in 10 seconds. The listener begins to notice that the problem is not just I can't sleep. It's a general habit of predicting disaster. As they see this pattern, they become more able to gently interrupt it. To help with that, he suggests micro-practices during the day. For example, every time they open a door, they can use it as a cue to take one conscious breath. Every time they unlock their phone, they can notice one sensation in their body before touching any app. These tiny pauses teach the mind a new rhythm. Instead of racing constantly, it learns to move, stop, and rest. By the time night comes, the mind has already practiced slowing down 100 times. Falling asleep becomes less of a war and more of a continuation. He speaks as someone who has watched many people transform their relationship with their own heads. Not by becoming Zen masters on a mountain, but by learning to see thoughts as visitors. Some visitors are noisy, some are kind, some are ridiculous. None of them are permanent residents unless they're invited to stay. When a person hears this enough times, something in them relaxes. They realize they don't have to fix every thought before they can rest. They only have to stop trying to be the manager of the whole universe. The mentor also plants a deeper reflection. If thoughts and moods are always passing, what is it that notices them come and go? He doesn't answer directly. He just points. The listener is invited to sense that quiet something that was there during good days and bad days, during childhood and now, during happy moments and painful ones. That silent witness is like the sky in the weather metaphor. Recognizing it doesn't instantly solve every problem, but it gives a new place to stand while the clouds do what clouds do. By the end of this first journey, the person starts to see their restless mind with a bit more tenderness. Instead of fighting it as an enemy, they begin to treat it as a very tired, very overworked guard dog. It's been trying to protect them for years, barking at every shadow. Now, little by little, it's learning that it's allowed to lie down sometimes. And as this understanding grows, another question quietly appears on the horizon. What happens when the storm inside meets the storms that come from other people and the outside world? There's a different kind of storm that keeps people awake at night. It's not just the noise inside the mind, but the noise outside. What others think, what they say, the way they judge. He knows this well because he's seen how a single comment on social media can ruin someone's whole day. One line from a stranger. You're fake. You're not good enough. You changed. And there goes the inner peace. The pillow is soft. The room is quiet. But the heart is still fighting an invisible court of opinions. That's where the Zen story of Master Hakuin hits like a surprise. In the village, he was respected, almost sacred. Then suddenly, a scandal explodes. A young woman gets pregnant and blames him. Overnight, the holy man becomes the villain. People gossip, students leave, his reputation is destroyed. And what does he say to all of that? Just 2 tiny words. Is that so? No long defense, no drama, just equanimity. At first sight, that answer sounds almost passive, like he doesn't care. But the mentor explains that this is actually radical strength. Most people would burn with anger, try to prove their innocence, control every rumor. Hakuin doesn't deny reality. He just refuses to let other people's stories decide who he is inside. He knows something we forget in the middle of the chaos. Reputation belongs to others, but inner peace belongs to us. The way he handles the baby is even more shocking. The angry parents dump the child in his arms. You take responsibility. He could have shouted, argued, exposed the truth. Instead, he accepts the baby and raises it with love as if it were his own. While everyone insults him, he's waking up at night, changing diapers, warming milk. The world is busy talking. He's busy loving. That's a whole different level of deep rest. The mentor brings this to our daily life with a simple example. Imagine someone at work spreads a rumor about you. Maybe they say you're lazy or untrustworthy. The first reaction is to defend, to send a long text, to replay the situation 1,000 times before sleep. He invites the listener to ask a different question. What if I put my energy into living my truth instead of obsessing about controlling their story? That's Hakuin's "Is that so?" in practice. He likes to compare reputation to the weather forecast. You can check the forecast. You can plan a little, but you can't stop the clouds. If you spend all day screaming at the sky, the only thing that changes is your blood pressure. In the same way, people's opinions will always be unstable. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy. The wise person carries an umbrella, not a lawsuit against the clouds. To make it concrete, he suggests a small nighttime ritual for those who are haunted by what others think. Before bed, the person writes 2 columns on a page. Things I can control and things I can't. In the first column, how I spoke, what I did, how I behaved. In the second, what they say, what they assume, what they gossip. The act of separating these worlds is like telling the mind, you don't have to carry what isn't yours. He also shares a personal season of life when he was misunderstood on purpose. A project failed, and instead of looking at the facts, people created stories. He didn't try hard enough. He's not as spiritual as he looks. For a while, he fought back, wrote long explanations, rehearsed speeches in the shower. It was exhausting. Only when he stopped trying to convince everyone did he notice something. The few people who really knew him had never doubted him in the first place. There's a quiet power in living like that. When someone knows who they are, criticism still stings, but it doesn't define. Praise still feels good, but it doesn't enslave. It's like standing in the middle of a cheering crowd and a booing crowd and realizing both groups will go home at the end of the day. The only one who stays with you in bed, in the mirror, in silence, is you. The mentor gives a practical, "Is that so?" exercise. The next time the listener hears a judgment, you're too emotional. You're selfish. You're not spiritual enough. Instead of swallowing it or fighting it, they can pause and say inside, "Is that so?" Not sarcastically, but curiously. If it's true, there's room to grow. If it's not, it can float by like a leaf on water. Either way, it doesn't have to invade the bedroom at night. He also reminds them that sometimes the loudest critic lives inside, the voice that says, "You always mess up. You're behind. You disappointed everyone." In those moments, "Is that so?" becomes a shield and a mirror. The person can gently question that inner bully. Always. Everyone? Really? Most of the time, the accusations collapse under their own exaggeration. The mind has been writing drama. Now awareness edits the script. Of course, he doesn't romanticize injustice. Being falsely accused, like Hakuin, hurts. Losing friends because of lies hurts. Pretending it doesn't would be spiritual bypassing. But he shows that there is a different type of justice operating quietly. Over time, reality has a way of exposing truth. The baby in Hakuin's story eventually returns to the real family. The lie dissolves. reputation can be rebuilt. The way we behaved in the middle of the storm, though, that stays. This is where deep rest starts to look different. It's not just about a quiet mind, it's about a quiet conscience. When a person knows they acted with integrity, they sleep differently. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not every night, but there's a soft pillow inside the chest. And on the nights when the mind tries to replay every detail of what people said, they can come back to a simple anchor. I showed up the best I could with the light I had. The mentor loves to show how this shift affects small daily scenes too. A family member throws a harsh comment at dinner. Instead of planning a counterattack in bed later, the person breathes and thinks, "Is that so?" A stranger online writes something nasty. Instead of arguing for 3 hours in the comments, they close the app, make a tea, and invest in something that actually matters to their soul. That's choosing inner peace over outer drama, again and again. With time, something subtle happens. Other people start to feel it. They notice that this person doesn't collapse when criticized and doesn't inflate when praised. There's a stable center there, like a calm lake in the middle of village noise. Some will misunderstand that calmness. Others will be quietly inspired by it. Either way, the person doesn't need to chase or escape anyone. They're finally at home inside their own skin. And just like that, the listener begins to wonder if one simple phrase, "Is that so?" can change the way they move through judgment and gossip. What other Zen lessons might be hiding in everyday challenges, especially in situations where anger explodes in a second and turns their inner world into a personal hell? He smiles softly when he tells the story of the king and the palace that was really just an inn. It sounds like a fairy tale at first. Marble walls, jewels in the stone, fountains dancing in the courtyard. The kind of place people dream of when they say, "One day, when my life is finally together." But then this wandering teacher walks in with dusty feet and a calm heart, asking for a place to sleep in this inn. One simple word, and the king's whole identity starts to wobble. The king is offended, of course. "This is my palace, not an inn. My father ruled here. My grandfather ruled here." His chest is full of history and importance. From the outside, it seems obvious. This man owns everything. Yet the teacher's questions slice deeper than any sword. "And where are your father and grandfather now?" The answer is painful and simple. Gone. The walls stayed. The owners rotated, just like guests. The mentor loves this story because it cracks open a very modern illusion. Today, people don't usually own palaces, but they cling to apartments, cars, careers, and titles with the same intensity. My house, my job, my status. He's not against any of that. He just knows that one day someone else will live in that house, drive that car, sit in that office. The question is, will the person enjoy these things while they have them, or live in constant fear of losing them? He compares it to renting a beautiful beach house for a week. Imagine arriving and spending the entire time terrified that in 7 days you'll have to leave. No walks on the sand, no sunsets, no laughter in the kitchen, just anxiety about checkout day. Most people would say, "That's crazy. Enjoy it while you're there." But that's exactly how many live with money, status, or possessions, already grieving their loss instead of enjoying their presence. He's seen this up close in people who made it financially and still couldn't sleep. One man doubled his income and tripled his fear. The more he owned, the more he felt owned. The house grew, the car improved, but his chest got smaller inside. He checked his bank app like some people check the weather. Every tiny change felt like a storm warning. The palace outside was shining. The inn inside was full of anxious guests. To make it practical, the mentor suggests a small exercise that sounds strange at first. He invites the listener to walk through their home, mentally labeling things not as mine, but as on loan. This couch is on loan. This phone is on loan. This body is on loan. Not to depress them, but to quietly shift the feeling from ownership to stewardship. When something is on loan, you care for it, you enjoy it, but you know it's not your identity. He tells a personal story, too. There was a time when he lost almost everything important on paper in a short period of time. A job, a relationship, savings. It felt like being kicked out of the palace. For a while, he thought, my life is over. Then, slowly, he noticed something odd. The only things that truly mattered most had stayed. His ability to love, to learn, to start again. The building around him had changed, but the traveler inside was still moving. To help the listener apply this without needing a crisis, he introduces what he calls gratitude without gripping. It works like this. When they receive a salary, instead of thinking, this proves my value, they think, thank you for now. When they sit in their car, thank you for now. When they kiss a loved one on the forehead, thank you for now. The for now doesn't weaken gratitude, it deepens it. Every moment becomes more precious because it's clearly not guaranteed. He uses a simple, real-life analogy. Think of your favorite series on a streaming platform. If the show was just one endless episode with no ending, you'd probably stop caring. What makes each season powerful is that you know it will end. You savor plot twists more because of that. Life works the same way. The roles of parent, student, manager, young, strong, all of them are seasons. The problem isn't that seasons end, it's insisting they should last forever. The mentor also brings this conversation close to the bedroom, back to sleepless nights. Many people lie awake worrying about losing something. Money, status, a relationship, their looks. The palace in their head feels like it's under attack. In those moments, he suggests gently asking, even if this changes, what remains? It's not a cold question. It's a doorway. It shifts the focus from the furniture of life to the one who's been moving through every room since childhood. He points out that, in the Zen story, the teacher never insults the palace. He doesn't say, burn this place down. He simply reframes it. Palace and inn are the same building with different stories. In the same way, an expensive car is just a car. A simple room is just a room. The mind is what turns one into a throne and the other into a prison, or vice versa. Once the listener sees that, they begin to loosen the chains they themselves put on their own wrists. There's also a gentle warning in this teaching. When someone ties their worth to job titles, possessions, or beauty, they're basically living in a house built on water. Any external change feels like drowning. The mentor doesn't shame this. He just asks, isn't it time to build at least part of your identity on something that doesn't vanish? Like your courage, your kindness, your ability to learn. Those are the things that travel with you from palace to palace, from season to season. He offers a very concrete tool to end the day differently. Before sleep, instead of scrolling until the eyes burn, the person can list 3 things they had today and 3 qualities they were today. For example, I had a car, a bed, a phone. I was patient, honest, and creative. The first list might change tomorrow. The second list is what they can take with them wherever they go. It's a simple way to remember they're more than their possessions. The mentor knows some people listening have already lost something big. A home, a business, a relationship, even health. For them, this story cuts deeper. He doesn't offer cheap comfort. He simply stands with them in that empty room and says, "You are not the loss. You are the one who is still here after the loss." That distinction doesn't erase the pain, but it keeps the person from disappearing inside it. Over time, this way of seeing changes how a person moves through the world. They still work, save money, take care of their stuff, dream of better things. But there's less panic in their grip. They can enjoy a palace moment without needing it to last forever. They can face an in-season, small, simple, humble, without feeling like a failure. The traveler is more important than the building. That truth becomes a kind of inner pillow. And as the listener feels this, a quiet question starts to form. If possessions and roles are all temporary stays in a cosmic inn, what happens to all the pain, the salt of life, that seems to make everything bitter? Is there a way to hold the same amount of pain with less suffering? The way a lake holds salt differently than a tiny glass. He likes to start this part with something everyone understands, that life is hard feeling. Not in a dramatic movie way, but in the small, relentless things. The back that hurts, the bill that never ends, the message that didn't come. Some people feel like every grain of difficulty hits them straight in the face. Others, somehow, seem to handle similar problems with more softness. The mentor doesn't pretend anyone escapes pain. He just knows there's a huge difference between pain and suffering. That's why he loves the story of the old master, the glass of water, and the mountain lake. The complaining student brings his usual list of problems. Meditation hurts. Life is unfair. Nothing works. The master doesn't argue, doesn't give a lecture, doesn't say, "Be grateful." Instead, he hands the student a handful of salt and tells him to dump it in a small glass and drink. The result is exactly what you'd expect. The taste is awful. Then comes the twist. The master gives him the same amount of salt, walks with him to a wide, clear lake, and asks him to throw the salt in and drink again. Same salt, same student, different container. The water from the lake tastes fresh, almost sweet. The bitterness disappears in the vastness. That's the moment the master says the line that can change a whole life. The pain of life is pure salt. No more, no less. The bitterness depends on the container. The mentor breaks this down in simple words. Your container is your consciousness, your sense of space inside. When a small irritation fills all your mental space, it's like putting salt in a shot glass. Everything becomes undrinkable. But when that same irritation lands in a wider awareness, surrounded by other perspectives, memories, and gratitude, it dissolves. The salt doesn't vanish. It just stops dominating the entire experience. He gives a very human example. Someone gets criticized at work. If their inner world is tiny that day, that one comment fills everything. They go home replaying it. They lie in bed rehearing it. They wake up thinking about it. Glass consciousness. But if their inner world is more like a lake, the same comment drops into a larger context. Their whole career, their other skills, the people who value them. The pain is still there, but it doesn't poison the whole day. The question then becomes practical. How does a person grow from glass to lake without needing to move to a mountain monastery? The mentor explains that becoming a lake is less about being strong and more about being spacious. It means letting more reality into the frame. Not just the problem, but everything else that is true at the same time. The fact they're breathing. The fact someone cares about them. The fact this moment isn't the entire story. One simple and surprisingly effective practice he suggests is widening the frame. When something painful happens, instead of zooming in, the person asks, "What else is here right now?" Maybe they feel the weight of their body on the chair, the temperature of the air, the sound of a distant car, the softness of their clothes. It sounds almost childish, but it trains the mind to remember. This problem is real, but it's not the only thing existing in the universe at this second. He tells a personal story of when he lost someone dear, and grief felt like all there was. For weeks, his mind was a shot glass full of salt. Leaving bed was hard. Eating was mechanical. Sleep was a stranger. Then, one morning, sitting by a window, he noticed something simple. A bird singing. The pain was still there, sharp and deep, but now there was also birdsong, sunlight, a cup of warm tea in his hands. Very slowly, his inner container began to stretch. To make this real for the listener, he suggests a tiny exercise they can try today. When something goes wrong, a delay, a rude message, a sudden worry, they pause and silently say, "This is the salt. Where is my lake?" Then they look for 3 things that are still okay in that exact moment. Lungs working, heart beating, roof overhead, someone they can text if needed. It doesn't erase the problem, but it widens the water around it. He also points out that some people unknowingly do the opposite. They shrink their container on purpose. How? By obsessing, by replaying, by telling themselves the worst possible story. One bad meeting becomes, "My career is over." One argument becomes, "I'm unlovable." That's like taking salt out of a lake, putting it back into a tiny glass, and then complaining about the taste. The mentor doesn't blame them. He just wants them to see they have more power than they think. Sometimes he uses the gym analogy, because pain there is easier to accept. When someone lifts weights, their muscles burn. Nobody says, "This pain means I'm cursed." They say, "This pain means I'm growing." The sensation itself doesn't change. The meaning does. In life, emotional pain can be seen in a similar way. If we hold it in a larger container, I'm learning patience, I'm building resilience, I'm discovering what matters. The same salt takes on a different flavor. He's honest, though. There are pains that feel bigger than any glass or lake. The loss of a child, serious illness, betrayal by someone deeply trusted. In those moments, this teaching is not about being cheerful. It's about surviving without drowning completely. Expanding the container might simply mean allowing support in E, letting others hold parts of the weight, or letting time slowly add more water to the lake. No one is asked to pretend that sea salt is sugar. To show the everyday side of this, he likes to talk about traffic. One person sits in a car, late to furious, imagining fights, honking, cursing, glass. Another person in the same traffic uses the time to listen to a good podcast, call a friend, hands-free, or simply breathe and look around. Lake. Both are stuck. Both arrive at the same time. But one arrives poisoned. The other arrives tired, but relatively calm. Same salt, different consciousness. The mentor also invites the listener to look back over their own life. Was there a moment that felt unbearable at the time, but today sits in a wider story? A breakup that led to a better relationship. A job loss that opened a new path. A failure that taught something priceless. Remembering these arcs is like pouring more water into the lake. The person realizes, if I survived that, maybe I'm bigger inside than I thought. He offers a nightly reflection that fits well in a sleep video. Before closing their eyes, the person can ask, "What was the salt today? What was the lake?" They name one hard thing and one way they were larger than it. Maybe they stayed kind. Maybe they didn't give up. Maybe they simply made it through the day. This trains the brain to look not only at the pain, but at the silent strength that held it. With time, the idea of becoming a lake stops being poetic and starts feeling practical. The listener notices that the same old worries don't sting quite as hard. The same comments don't echo all night. They still feel everything. This isn't about numbness, but they're no longer destroyed by each pinch of salt. Their inner world becomes a little wider, a little quieter, a little more peaceful to live in. And as that inner lake grows, another quiet question rises to the surface. If so much of suffering comes from the way we hold pain, what about all the old hurts we keep carrying from the past? The invisible weight on our shoulders that refuses to be put down, like an empty backpack that somehow feels impossibly heavy. He knows there's a specific kind of tiredness that doesn't show up in blood tests. It's that quiet heaviness a person carries even on days when nothing bad is happening right now. They wake up already drained, as if they ran an emotional marathon during the night. No one sees it, but it's there when they look in the mirror and think, "Why am I still like this?" It's not the weight of today. It's yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that, piled up inside. That's why the story of the empty backpack feels so uncomfortably accurate. The young seeker walks through a maze, bent forward under a pack that seems impossibly heavy. Every step hurts. Every turn feels blocked. He thinks the problem is outside, the walls, the path, maybe even fate. Then he finally opens the bag and discovers something shocking. It's empty. Not a single rock. Nothing physical inside. Yet his body swears it's carrying a mountain. In that moment, a whisper comes. "Look inside you, not inside the backpack." That's when old scenes start playing like a movie. Childhood insults that were never forgotten. Moments of humiliation in school. The betrayal of a friend. The breakup text that shattered their confidence. Each memory is like an invisible stone the heart keeps putting back in the bag, over and over again. The backpack isn't the problem. The attachment to the pain is. The mentor explains it gently. The past itself isn't climbing into bed with you. It's your relationship with the past. The story you keep telling about what happened and what it means about you. "I was rejected" quietly turns into "I'm unlovable." "They hurt me" becomes "I'm always the victim." Without noticing, the person stops carrying events and starts carrying identities. That's what makes the empty backpack feel so impossibly heavy. He gives a relatable example. Imagine someone who was humiliated by a teacher at 12 years old. Today, they're 32, in a completely different life. Yet every time they speak in front of others, they feel the same fear in their throat. The teacher is long gone. The classroom doesn't exist anymore. But the scene plays again and again. It's like the mind keeps hitting replay on an old VHS tape and then wondering why the picture still hurts. Forgiveness is where it gets tricky. Many people believe forgiving means saying, "It's fine, it didn't matter," or letting someone off the hook. The mentor disagrees. He explains forgiveness more like this: "I'm done letting this moment control my nervous system." It's not pretending the wound didn't happen. It's refusing to give it unlimited access to your present. You're not telling them what they did was okay. You're telling your own heart, "You don't have to hold this alone anymore." To make it practical, He suggests an honest backpack inventory. The listener can close their eyes and ask, "Who still lives in my mind rent-free?" Names will appear: an ex-you, a parent, a boss, a friend, even themselves. Then they ask, "What sentence do I still repeat because of them?" Maybe it's, "You're not enough. You'll never succeed. You're always the problem." Each sentence is a stone. Just seeing it clearly is the first step to putting it down. He shares a personal example to show this isn't theory. There was a time he carried a deep resentment towards someone who lied about him. He replayed the story so many times that, eventually, the lie became more alive in his body than in reality. One day, he realized that person had moved on. They weren't thinking about him at all. The only place the wound was still fresh was inside his own backpack. That realization hurt his pride, but freed his heart. One exercise he recommends is simple, but powerful. Writing letters you'll never send. In one, you say everything your hurt self wants to say. Raw, honest, uncensored. In another, you write from your wiser self, answering with compassion and boundaries. Then you safely destroy the pages. Fire, shredder, or trash. The point isn't to deliver the letter, it's to give your nervous system a chance to finally process what was frozen in time. He also reminds the listener that the backpack doesn't just affect emotions, it shows up in the body. Tight shoulders, clenched jaw, headaches, that constant knot in the stomach. He suggests a small body check before sleep. Lying in bed, the person scans from head to toe and quietly asks, "Where am I holding old stories?" When they find tension, they breathe into that spot and imagine taking one stone out of the pack with every exhale. Slow, gentle, no rush. Self-forgiveness is often the heaviest stone. Many people secretly believe they must suffer forever for mistakes they made. The mentor speaks to that directly. He reminds them that growth is not proven by lifelong punishment, but by changed behavior. If they're trying to do better now, the sentence no longer fits the crime. Keeping themselves in an internal prison doesn't protect anyone. It only wastes the years they still have to love and serve. He likes to use a simple image. Imagine dragging a suitcase through an airport that's filled not with clothes, but with bricks. When someone asks why you're exhausted, you say, "Because traveling is hard." But actually, it's the bricks. The past is the suitcase. The guilt, shame, and grudges are the bricks. The crazy part, you're the only one with the key. Yes, others helped put things in there, but you're the one still towing it around every hallway. The practical question becomes, what do I do with that key? He suggests starting very small. Choose one memory that hurts, but not the worst one. Ask, what belief about myself did I build around this? Then gently challenge that belief. If you believed, "I'm stupid," you can list moments when you were actually wise. If you believed, "I'm unworthy of love," you can list people who were happy to have you around. Bit by bit, you loosen the knot between event and identity. He also points out that some backpacks are too heavy to unpack alone. That's where therapy, support groups, or wise friends come in. There is no shame in needing help with the big stones. Trauma, abuse, deep grief. Asking for help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've stopped pretending you can hike up the mountain with a broken back. The bravest thing some people will ever do is say, "I can't carry this by myself anymore." As the listener imagines the young seeker finally floating above the maze, something inside them recognizes the feeling. It's that lightness they tasted the last time they truly forgave someone, even for a second. or the moment they stopped blaming themselves for something they did as a scared, younger version of who they are today. That feeling isn't fantasy. It's proof that the backpack can actually be emptied over time. To close the night, he offers a gentle ritual. Before sleep, put a hand on the chest and whisper, "For tonight, I'm allowed to put this down. Not forever, not all at once, just for now." The mind might argue, "But we need to think about this." He answers softly, "We've carried it all day. We can rest for a few hours." That's how the process begins, with tiny permissions to be lighter, even if the story isn't fully resolved yet. And as the person slowly learns to travel with less invisible weight, another question begins to surface. If they can release these inner burdens, what happens when life throws fresh injustice at them from the outside? Like a stranger crossing their boundaries, a thief, or someone trying to harm them. Is it possible to stay peaceful and kind, even in the face of open aggression? He knows a lot of people listening have a very real question in their chest. If I become more peaceful, won't people walk all over me? It's not a theory. It comes from scars, from the time someone took advantage of their kindness, from that betrayal that still burns. So he doesn't start this story with flowers. He starts with a door kicked open, a sword raised, and an old monk staring calmly at a man who's ready to kill him. The thief bursts in expecting panic, shaking hands, desperate bargaining, maybe a hidden safe. Instead, the master keeps reciting sutras, barely lifting his eyes. When he finally speaks, his words sound almost absurd. "Please, don't disturb my practice. If you need money, help yourself. It's in the drawer." Just like that, no fighting, no screaming, no speech about morality. Aggression meets deep rest. The thief is completely thrown off. His whole identity as the dangerous one depends on the other being afraid. But here, the old man acts like he's dealing with a neighbor borrowing sugar. So the thief does what he came to do, but with shaky hands, he takes the money. He's halfway out the door when the master calls after him. "Don't take it all. I need some to pay my taxes tomorrow." The room suddenly feels like a very strange dream. Then comes the line that cracks something open. As the thief leaves, the old man says, "And don't forget to say thank you." Imagine that. Not only did he not resist, he demanded basic manners. The thief mumbles a thank you and runs away, probably more shaken than in any fight. The body got the money, but the heart received something else. A seed. A tiny, irritating question. What kind of human responds like that? Later, when the thief is arrested and dragged into court, everything is supposed to be predictable. He confesses to his crimes. The judge calls witnesses. It's time to pay for what he did. But when the master is asked to testify, he says something that shocks everyone. "He didn't steal from me. I gave him the money. He even thanked me." Suddenly, the script breaks again. The court wanted a victim, but the master refuses to play that role. The mentor uses this story to explain a different kind of strength. It's not weak to be peaceful. It's just a strength most people never train. Anyone can explode when threatened. That's automatic. It takes another level of awareness to stay rooted in inner peace while responding to danger with clarity instead of panic. The master wasn't unaware of the risk. He just refused to let fear dictate his character. To make it practical, he talks about more ordinary thieves. The co-worker who steals credit for your idea, the family member who drains your time with constant drama, the stranger who attacks you online. Most people respond in one of two ways: attack back harder or collapse and feel like a doormat. Zen compassion offers a third path, firm on the outside when needed, but free on the inside. He shares a personal situation. Once, someone told lies about him in a group to make themselves look better. The reflex was pure fire: defend, expose, destroy. But instead of reacting immediately, he paused. He asked, "What response aligns with the person I want to be 5 years from now?" He chose to calmly clarify the truth with the people who actually mattered and let the rest fall away. On the surface, it looked like doing little. Inside, it was a revolution. He emphasizes this. Compassionate doesn't mean naive. If someone is violent, you call the police. If someone abuses you, you leave. If someone crosses your boundaries again and again, you reinforce them. The master's choice to give money freely was not permission for the thief to hurt others. It was his way of saying, "You can touch my possessions, but not my peace." That's a very different posture from being helpless. To help listeners apply this, he offers a simple inner question whenever someone invades their house, whether literally or emotionally. What is really at risk here? Sometimes the answer is my body, and then safety comes first. But often the answer is my ego, my pride, my image. In those moments, they can experiment with protecting what truly matters while letting go of what's just vanity in disguise. He also invites them to look at difficult people through a different lens, not to excuse harm, but to understand the roots. A thief usually isn't born in a warm, loving home with endless support. An aggressive boss rarely built their personality in a safe, secure childhood. Seeing someone's actions as symptoms of deep suffering doesn't mean letting them hurt you. It means not letting their darkness become your darkness. One exercise he suggests is incredibly simple and surprisingly powerful. When someone is aggressive with you, in traffic, at work, in a message, silently think, "You must be suffering a lot today." You don't say it out loud. You don't pretend everything is okay. But this one thought keeps your own heart from shrinking to their level. It's like choosing to stay in the monastery even when someone kicks the door open. He talks about how this affects sleep, too. Many people reenact arguments in their head for hours in bed. They win imaginary fights, deliver perfect comebacks, punish the other person over and over. In the end, who loses rest? The person lying awake. The thief is probably snoring. The only heart being robbed at 2 a.m. is their own. The master refuses this bargain. He gives the thief the coins and keeps the night. For those who have gone through real harm, abuse, violence, deep betrayal, this story lands differently. The mentor doesn't say, "Just be peaceful." That would be cruel. Instead, he says, "Your safety comes first." But once you're safe, your real victory isn't that they suffer. Your real victory is that they don't get to own your mind forever. The court scene shows this. The master protects the man's possibility of change instead of joining the crowd demanding blood. He reminds listeners that the ex-thief didn't become a student because someone yelled at him or humiliated him. He changed because someone saw more in him than his worst moment. That kind of love is terrifying and liberating at the same time. It breaks every logic of "you did bad, you are bad forever." Many people listening have never received that kind of grace. Some have never given it to themselves. So he finishes this story with a challenge that's quietly radical. Who in your life has hurt you and yet still lives inside your mind as nothing but a monster? Again, this isn't about reuniting, trusting, or even speaking to them. It's about seeing if you can, at least in your heart, move them 1 inch from monster to wounded human who does terrible things. That tiny shift is often the beginning of your own freedom. Over time, the person notices that this fearless compassion changes how conflict feels. They might still defend themselves, set boundaries, even walk away. But they don't stay poisoned for days after. They become more like the master at his table, aware of the danger, but rooted in something deeper than what's happening in the room. Their peace stops being fragile. It becomes a steady presence. And as they learn to move through conflict without drowning in it, another question naturally appears. If that kind of inner stability is possible even in front of a sword, what happens when life itself throws us off a cliff? When the river suddenly swells, the ground disappears beneath our feet, and the only way to survive is to stop fighting the water and learn to trust the current instead. He knows there's a moment in everyone's life when they feel exactly like that old man slipping into the raging river. One day, everything seems under control, and the next, the ground just disappears. A relationship ends, a job is lost, a diagnosis arrives, or some family crisis explodes out of nowhere. Suddenly, the person feels like they're being dragged toward a waterfall they never asked for. The mind screams, "This is it, I'm done," even while the body is still very much alive. That's why the image of the old sage falling into the torrent is so powerful. The villagers watching are sure they've just seen a death sentence. They already start rehearsing the story they'll tell. Poor old man, such a tragic accident. From the outside, it looks hopeless. From the inside, though, something very different is happening. The sage isn't arguing with the water. He's making a radical choice: to let the current move his body instead of letting panic move his mind. When they find him standing calmly downstream, brushing water from his sleeves like he's just had a refreshing swim, their first reaction is disbelief. "How did you not die?" they ask, half expecting some magic trick, and he answers with that simple explanation that sounds almost too easy. "When the water went down, I went down. When it swirled, I swirled. I accommodated myself to the water, not the water to me." In other words, he survived because he stopped demanding reality behave the way he wanted. The mentor uses this story to talk about a kind of intelligence schools don't teach: the wisdom of not fighting what you can't control. Most people, when life throws them into the river, do the opposite. They stiffen, flail, scream inside, and try to force the current to go in the direction they had planned. This relationship can't end. This job can't be gone. This health issue can't be real. The more they resist, the harder the rocks hit. He gives a simple, everyday example. Imagine someone stuck in a traffic jam on the way to an important appointment. They can't teleport. They can't make the cars evaporate. But inside, they're wrestling the river, cursing, clenching the jaw, inventing worst-case scenarios. Same river, different inner posture. Another person in the same traffic breathes, calls ahead if possible, accepts they'll be late, and uses the time to listen to something uplifting. The outside doesn't change. The inner bruises do. To make this very practical, he suggests a small inner question whenever life feels like a waterfall. What part of this is water, and what part is me? Water is everything you can't control. Other people's decisions, the past, the weather, the collision that already happened. Me is how you breathe, what story you tell, what you choose right now. When someone tries to control the water, they drown in frustration. When they focus on their own posture, they suddenly discover room to move. he shares a personal story of a plan that collapsed, a project he loved, months of work, suddenly canceled by forces outside his control. At first, he did what everyone does, stayed up all night, trying to mentally undo what had already happened. But then he remembered the old man and the waterfall. He asked, "If this is the river, where is my movement?" That's when he started writing again, using the energy of disappointment as motivation instead of letting it rot inside. He also points out that going with the flow is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean being passive or careless. The old man wasn't giving up on living. He was actively cooperating with reality. In real life, that might look like accepting a breakup, but still giving yourself permission to grieve and heal. Or losing a job, but instead of clinging to the old one mentally, consciously using the forced change to reassess what you actually want next. For those who like concrete actions, he offers a simple technique, the 3 breaths of surrender. When something goes very wrong, the email, the phone call, the sudden news, before reacting, take 3 slow breaths and silently say, "This is happening. I don't have to like it, but it's what's here." That tiny pause is like turning the body, so the current hits the back instead of the face. You're still in the water, but now you're in a position to see where you can swim. He knows some listeners might think, "Easy for the old man, my situation is different." So he's honest. Some rivers are brutal. Divorce, serious illness, the death of someone you love. These aren't little streams. In those currents, flowing might simply mean allowing others to help, accepting rest instead of forcing productivity, or letting yourself cry without judging your tears. Sometimes, the bravest version of trusting the current is to admit, "I can't hold this alone." To show how this applies to rest, he talks about the nights when the mind insists on replaying the day's river over and over. Instead of arguing with the thoughts, "I shouldn't be thinking about this," he suggests treating them like water. Let them come and go, noticing them without climbing on every wave. It's the difference between watching the waterfall from the bank and throwing yourself into it at midnight, mentally, again and again. He also makes an important distinction. Accepting isn't approving. The old man didn't say, "This waterfall is lovely. I'm so glad I fell." Acceptance says, "This is what is, whether I like it or not." Approval would say, "And I think it's wonderful." You can fully accept that something is real while fully disliking it. But without acceptance, you can't respond wisely, because part of you is still trying to live in a reality that no longer exists. Sometimes he uses a funny little metaphor. Try to imagine surfing on a frozen wave. It doesn't work. Surfing only exists because the water moves. In the same way, a lot of the beauty and growth in life only appears because situations change. People leave, new people arrive, jobs end, new paths open. Health shifts, priorities reorder. When we cling too hard to the old shore, we never discover the beaches we secretly dreamt about. He invites the listener to think about one event that felt like it was going to destroy them but didn't. Maybe a breakup, a move, getting fired, or failing an exam. At the time, it felt like pure drowning. But looking back, they might notice that this very event changed their direction in a way that, strangely, served them later. That doesn't mean the pain was good, but it reveals that the current sometimes knows routes we wouldn't choose on our own. To help connect this with daily life, he suggests a small evening reflection. Where did I fight the river today? And where did I flow? Maybe they insisted on winning a pointless argument. That was fighting. Maybe they adapted when plans changed last minute. That was flowing. The goal isn't perfection. It's just noticing the pattern. Awareness is what slowly teaches the body and mind how to relax into the water instead of thrashing. Little by little, the listener starts to understand that rest isn't only about silence or darkness. It's about trusting that they don't need to drag the entire river upstream before they're allowed to lie down. They can let some things move on without chasing them. They can allow some doors to close without the current keeps flowing, with or without their permission. It's a quiet relief to no longer feel personally responsible for controlling the entire waterfall. And as that trust in life's movement grows, another kind of question appears. If it's possible to stop wrestling with every wave, is it also possible to stop arguing with the sky itself? To stop waking up every morning fighting the weather of life, and instead discover a deeper contentment that doesn't depend on sun, rain, or storms at all? He knows most people live like the traveler on that dusty road, always checking the sky, always asking, how's the weather going to be today? But deep down, weather is just a code word for everything they can't control. Will people treat me well? Will money flow or dry up? Will today be good or bad? Their mood rises and falls like a thermometer, and they don't even realize how exhausted that roller coaster is making them. That's why the shepherd's answer sounds so strange and so wise at the same time. When asked, what kind of weather will we have today, he smiles and says, the kind of weather I like. The traveler gets annoyed. He wants a forecast, not a riddle. How can you know you'll like it? He insists. The shepherd's reply is simple. Because I've learned to like whatever comes. He doesn't control the sky. He controls his posture under it. The mentor uses this story to talk about a very misunderstood word, acceptance. Many people confuse it with resignation, as if accepting reality means giving up on improvement. But the shepherd doesn't stop caring for his flock. He still moves them to safe places, still watches the clouds. His secret isn't passivity. It's refusing to let his happiness depend on something as unstable as the weather. He gives a modern example. Imagine someone whose mood depends on notifications. If the phone blows up with likes, messages, good news, they're sunny. If it's quiet or there's criticism, they sink into a storm inside. They're not actually living their own life. They're just a mirror for the external forecast. The shepherd, on the other hand, lives from the inside out. The sky can change 100 times. His inner climate learns how to stay mild. To make this practical, he suggests a small reflection. What are the weathers I'm always checking? For some, it's money. For others, approval. For many, it's whether the day goes exactly as planned. The person can list them. I only feel okay when, and fill in the blanks. That list reveals their inner climate addictions. Those are the clouds they keep bargaining with, day after day. He shares a personal season where he was addicted to good weather in the form of productivity. If the day was full of checked boxes, he felt valuable. If he had to rest, if plans changed, he felt like a failure. One day, after getting sick and being forced to stop, he realized his worth had become tied to a to-do list. The weather of his calendar was running his soul. That realization hurt, but it cracked open a new kind of freedom. He explains that the shepherd's wisdom isn't about pretending everything is fine. If a storm comes, the shepherd still brings the sheep to shelter. If the sun is scorching, he looks for shade and water. In daily life, that means you still lock your doors, still pay your bills, still solve problems. The difference is that you stop believing, only when everything is perfect can I allow myself to be at peace. For listeners who like concrete actions, he offers a daily weather journal. At the end of the day, They can rate the outside weather from 1 to 10 and their inside weather from 1 to 10. Was it a chaotic day outside, but strangely okay inside? Or was it a normal day outside, but a hurricane inside? Over time, they start to see that the inside number doesn't have to copy the outside number. That gap is where freedom grows. He also talks about the subtle addiction to complaining. For some people, complaining has become their favorite small talk. The bus, the boss, the heat, the rain, the traffic. It feels harmless, but it trains the brain to look for what's wrong first. The shepherd probably saw the same rocks, the same dust, the same storms, but instead of saying, "Why is the sky against me?" he trained himself to ask, "How do I walk wisely under this sky today?" To make it real, he offers a small experiment. Choose one thing you usually complain about: the morning commute, the dishes, the weather itself. For 1 week, no complaining about that thing out loud. Instead, whenever you feel the urge, you say, "This is the kind of weather I have. How can I walk well in it?" Maybe you use the commute to listen to something inspiring. Maybe you turn dishwashing into a quiet mini meditation. Same sky, different inner posture. He knows some people listening are facing storms far beyond small annoyances. Chronic illness, financial pressure, complicated family situations. For them, the shepherd's phrase might sound naive at first. That's why he adds an important nuance. Liking what you get doesn't always mean liking the situation. It means liking the opportunity to respond with integrity, courage, and wisdom, even when the situation is objectively hard. He shares an example of someone caring for a sick parent. The weather is objectively tough. Hospital visits, emotional fatigue, fear of loss. But inside that storm, they discover unexpected sunlight, deep conversations that never happened before, old resentments melting, a tenderness they didn't know they had. They don't like the illness, but they learn to cherish the way love appears inside that bad weather. He also invites the listener to consider how much energy is wasted arguing with reality. Statements like, "This shouldn't be happening," seem reasonable, but the more often they're repeated, the more powerless a person feels. The shepherd's approach is different. He silently says, "It is happening, so how do I meet it?" That one shift moves a person from victim to participant. They may not control the script, but they control their role in it. To anchor this into rest, he offers a simple nighttime practice. Before sleep, the person can ask themselves, "What was today's weather?" And then, "What part of my reaction made it heavier, and what part made it lighter?" They're not judging themselves, just noticing. Over time, this awareness starts to break the automatic link between circumstances and suffering. The clouds outside stop having absolute power over the climate inside. He adds a gentle reminder. Contentment isn't the same as settling for less. The shepherd doesn't stop dreaming, doesn't stop working the land, but he refuses to postpone his peace until life matches some fantasy. Many people say, "I'll be happy when," and then keep changing the conditions forever. The shepherd quietly flips the script. "I'll learn to be at peace now, and from that peace, I'll build what I can." Little by little, the listener starts to feel the difference between placing their happiness in the hands of weather and placing it in the hands of wisdom. When they stop demanding that every day be sunny, rainy days become less threatening. Windy days become less insulting. Life turns from a constant argument into a series of questions. How can I walk well in this? That attitude alone already lowers the volume of anxiety. And as they grow in this art of liking what they get, without losing the will to improve what they can. Another, deeper question starts to emerge. If our inner climate has so much power, what happens when the storms aren't outside at all, but inside our own mind? When the ghosts that keep us awake at night are actually made of thoughts, guilt, and fear that we ourselves have been feeding for years? He knows a lot of people listening don't believe in ghosts, but they do believe in something much more terrifying: their own guilt. That husband who promised a dying wife he'd never love again is just a mirror of anyone who's ever made a promise they couldn't keep. At first, he honors it, isolates himself, avoids joy, almost as if he's punishing himself to prove his love was real. And then life, stubborn as always, brings someone new, kind, warm, alive. The moment he dares to accept happiness again, the ghost shows up to collect the debt. Not from the outside, but from inside his own mind, dressed in her voice. The mentor explains that the scariest part of the story isn't the apparition itself. It's the ghost's impossible knowledge. Every word he spoke to his new love, every detail of their meetings, every secret thought. That's exactly how guilt works in real life. It knows every corner of the story because it was there when you did everything. So when that inner voice says, "You betrayed, you failed, you don't deserve this," it feels all-seeing, almost supernatural. But like the ghost, it's made entirely from memory, fear, and old conditioning. Powerful, yes. Divine, no. He connects this to everyday hauntings. The person who cheated once and now sabotages every healthy relationship because "I'm not a good partner." So the entrepreneur who went bankrupt and now, every time a new idea appears, hears a ghost saying, "You're just going to ruin it again." The parent who once lost their temper with a child and now lives under a constant invisible accusation of being a bad mother or a bad father. No chains rattling in the hallway, but the same cold feeling in the chest. The ghost shows up right when joy knocks at the door. The master's advice is genius in its simplicity. Test the ghost. He tells the man to do something his own memory can't predict. Grab a random handful of beans and close his fist. When the ghost appears, it can recite conversations, describe scenes, repeat promises, but it can't answer one simple question: how many beans? In that moment, the spell breaks. What pretended to be all-knowing is exposed as a replay machine. It knows the past, not the present. The mentor turns this into a very practical exercise. Whenever a cruel inner voice appears and claims to know the future, they'll leave. You'll fail. You'll regret this. He invites the listener to do a bean test. Ask that thought something it can't know. If you're so sure, tell me exactly how tomorrow will unfold, minute by minute. The thought can't answer. Its power shrinks, even if just a little, just enough for a breath, and then another. He shares a personal story of being haunted by a ghost of failure. After a big project collapsed, every new idea woke up that inner voice. Remember the last time? Don't even try. It felt like the voice was protecting him, but in reality, it was just freezing him in the past. One day, he sat down and wrote the ghost's prophecy in detail. What exactly would go wrong? When? How? Months later, almost none of it happened. The ghost was loud, not accurate. He explains that the ghost's power comes from two ingredients: unresolved emotion and unquestioned belief. The husband in the story never processed his grief, never questioned the promise he made in a moment of desperation. So his mind built a ghost to defend that promise long after it stopped making sense. Many people do the same with vows like, "I'll never trust anyone again," or "I'll always be strong." When life invites them to love or be vulnerable, the ghost appears to enforce a contract they don't even remember signing. To help the listener, he suggests writing down one ghost sentence that keeps coming back. Something like, "I don't deserve happiness," or "Good things never last for me." On paper, it looks less mystical and more like what it is: a belief, not a law. Then, gently, they can ask, "Who taught me this? Where did I first hear this voice?" Often, the ghost begins to sound suspiciously like a parent, a teacher, a past partner. Human, limited, wounded. Not omniscient. He also makes an important distinction. Pain is real, but the ghost is optional. The man really did lose his wife. That grief is no illusion. Your breakup, your loss, your mistake. Those events happened, but the ghost that says, "Because of this, you are forever unworthy of joy," is built on top of the event like fog on a valley. The mountain is real. The fog is temporary. You don't remove the mountain, but you don't worship the fog either. For those who struggle with intrusive thoughts at night, he offers a practical ritual. When a painful memory appears, instead of wrestling it, name it. This is a memory, not a prediction. Then feel something physical: the weight of the blanket, the sound of a fan, the rhythm of breath. Memories belong to another time. Sensations belong to this one. It's like turning on a small lamp in a haunted room. You still see the furniture, but it's not a monster anymore. He gently invites the listener to question the loyalty they give to their ghosts. Some people are more faithful to their guilt than to their own healing. They defend their self-accusation like a sacred truth. "No, you don't understand. I really am awful." The master in the story does the opposite. He helps the man see that honoring his late wife doesn't mean living in permanent emotional prison. Love doesn't demand eternal self-punishment. The mentor also talks about how ghosts love silence, not the peaceful kind, but the silence of secrets, things we never say out loud, never write, never show anyone. That's why confession, therapy, honest conversations with trusted friends can feel almost magical. When something leaves the darkness of pure thought and enters the light of words, its grip weakens. It doesn't disappear instantly, but it stops being an untouchable monster. It becomes a story you can work with. To keep the lesson grounded, he suggests a simple nightly question. What haunted me most today? Maybe it was a fear, a regret, a memory. Instead of judging it, the listener can write one paragraph about it as if it were a character in a book. How does it talk? What does it want? What is it afraid of? This small distance, seeing the ghost as a character, reminds them that they are the author, not the prisoner. The pen is in their hand. He doesn't pretend this is easy. Some ghosts have been in the house for years, maybe decades. They've rearranged the furniture, picked the music, lived rent-free in the guest room of the mind. Kicking them out overnight isn't realistic, but shrinking them, questioning them, refusing to treat them as gods, that's completely possible. And every small act of questioning is like removing one brick from the haunted wall. Little by little, the person starts to understand the most liberating part of the story. The man doesn't need an exorcist. He needs a new relationship with his own thoughts. The ghost disappears, not when the past is erased, but when the present becomes stronger than the replay. When they stop believing every scary story their mind tells at 2 a.m., the haunting loses its script. Silence starts to feel less like a threat and more like home again. Rest becomes possible. And as they begin to see that many of their ghosts are actually self-made, shaped by old hurts, old vows, old identities, another question naturally arises. If the mind can create such heavy phantoms from nothing but memory and fear, how many invisible weights is it also stuffing into the backpack they carry through life, making every step harder than it needs to be? He knows a lot of people listening have that same burning fire as the young student in the story. That feeling of, I want to change my life now. I want deep rest now. I want inner peace now. So the student runs to the master with the most motivational energy possible, promising to work harder than anyone. He wants enlightenment the way some people want a promotion or a beach body. Fast, intense, no time to waste. And when the master says 10 years, he almost chokes. His mind can't understand that the path of Zen doesn't obey the same rules as the gym. When he insists, but what if I work very, very hard? The master calmly replies, then 20 years. The more he pushes, the longer the timeline gets, until the number reaches 30. It sounds cruel at first, but the teacher is holding up a mirror. He's showing that the very tension driving the student is exactly what blocks true awareness. It's like trying to fall asleep by clenching your fists and thinking, sleep harder. The more you chase it, the further it slips away. The mentor uses this to talk about a modern version of the Enlightenment student. Today, it might be someone binge-watching self-help, stacking meditation apps, reading 5 spiritual books at once. On paper, they look incredibly committed. Inside, they're exhausted, impatient, secretly checking, am I enlightened yet? Every few days. Their mind has one eye on the practice and one eye on the scoreboard. The master's phrase explains why, with one eye on the goal, you only have one eye on the path. He gives a very simple analogy. Imagine learning to play piano. If every time you practice, half your brain is obsessed with, when will I be good enough to post on Instagram? Your fingers never truly relax. You miss the actual sound of the notes because you're listening for applause that hasn't happened yet. Zen practice is like that, but deeper. If the person meditates only to achieve inner peace, the practice becomes another project of the restless mind. They're trying to outrun anxiety with more anxiety. To make this real, he invites the listener to notice how they approach rest. Do they lie down thinking, I must sleep quickly. I have only 6 hours. This has to work. That pressure alone can keep the body wired, like holding down the gas and brake at the same time. The same thing happens with inner peace. When they turn calmness into a target, it stiffens instead of softening. True deep rest doesn't respond to force. It responds to gentle, honest attention. The mentor shares a personal season of spiritual overtraining. There was a time when he measured his worth by how many hours he meditated, how many pages he read, how disciplined he looked. On the outside, it was impressive. On the inside, there was still a nervous voice whispering, you're behind. Others are ahead. Hurry. He realized one day that he had turned the path into a race, and races are terrible places to relax. He explains that the problem isn't effort itself. The problem is grasping. Effort says, I'm willing to show up consistently. Grasping says, I refuse to be okay until I reach a specific result. Effort opens the door. Grasping slams it on your own fingers. The student's question keeps coming from grasping. How fast can I get there if I crush it? The master's answer keeps pointing back to effort without obsession. For those who like practical tools, he suggests a small experiment in any daily practice. If someone is meditating, journaling, praying, or even walking, they can quietly ask, "What am I secretly hoping to get from this today?" Maybe it's instant calm, a sign, a breakthrough, a perfect idea. Then, just for that session, they drop the demand and keep only the action. Today, I'll just sit. Or, today, I'll just walk and feel my feet. No extra requirement attached. He compares it to planting seeds in a garden. No sane gardener screams at the soil, "Grow faster, I'm spiritual, I deserve instant tomatoes." They know their job: prepare the ground, plant, water, protect. Sunlight, rain, timing. Those belong to something bigger than their control. In the same way, the listener's job is to create habits of presence and kindness. How fast the fruit appears is not entirely theirs to manage. He brings the idea closer to everyday ambitions, not just spiritual ones. Someone might be desperate to heal anxiety, fix their finances, or repair a relationship. Those are beautiful motivations. But if they carry them like the student carries enlightenment, tight, impatient, full of fear, they burn out quickly. The teacher's wisdom suggests a different approach. Walk steadily, eyes on the next step, not constantly on the horizon. Progress feels slower at first, but it's more sustainable and more peaceful. He also talks about the trap of comparing journeys. The student wants to be the fastest, the most dedicated, the record breaker of awakening. In our world, that's like comparing meditation streaks, followers, income, or healing speed. But Zen doesn't hand out gold medals. C'est toi en phase. It just keeps asking, are you here, now, in this breath? Someone behind in years of practice can be far ahead in simple presence. To lighten the mood, he jokes gently that enlightenment doesn't send a text message. You won't get a notification saying, "Congrats, you're officially awakened, here's your badge." Usually, what actually happens is quieter. You notice you're less reactive in a situation that used to trigger you. You feel a little softer with yourself when you make a mistake. You catch yourself breathing instead of spiraling. Those small shifts are worth more than any imagined lightning bolt from the sky. He suggests a nightly question for those hungry for growth. Did I walk the path today, or did I only dream about the destination? Walking the path might look like 5 honest minutes of stillness, 1 kind conversation, 1 moment of really tasting your food. Dreaming about the destination looks like scrolling spiritual quotes without applying any of them. Neither is evil, but only one changes your nervous system. The student learns this slowly. Reality is shaped by practice, not fantasy. The mentor admits that urgency can carry a wound inside it. Sometimes, "I have to evolve fast" is a softer way of saying, "I can't stand myself as I am." The master sees that in the student's eyes and responds with time, not techniques. He stretches the timeline because he knows healing requires spaciousness. If the person relaxes around their own imperfection, their growth actually accelerates. Paradoxically, giving up the rush makes transformation deeper. He points out that this story is especially important for listeners who use content like this to fall asleep. Trying to force sleep or peace through Zen stories will only make the body more alert. Instead, the invitation is to let the stories be like gentle background rain. You don't need to catch every word or decode every teaching. It's enough to let the tone of wisdom and calm soak into your nervous system. You grow while you rest, not only while you try. Little by little, the listener sees that the master wasn't punishing the student. He was saving him from turning the path into another addiction. When both eyes return to the path, the breath, the body, the very next step, life becomes less about chasing enlightenment and more about living awake. That shift alone brings a strange kind of deep rest, even in the middle of busy days. And as this understanding sinks in, a new question appears on the horizon, softer but powerful. If the goal isn't to become a famous sage, what if the real magic is in how each ordinary life, lived with this kind of awareness, quietly leaves a golden wake of goodness behind it? The mentor starts by reminding the listener of that young monk sitting on the temple steps, feeling like a total failure. He couldn't memorize sutras. He nodded off during meditation, and compared to the others, he felt painfully average. In his mind, the boat coming to take him home was a symbol of shame, like being expelled from spiritual school. A lot of people recognize that feeling, even if their monastery was a college, a job, or a dream that didn't work out. When expectations from family, society, or even God seem disappointed in you, it cuts deep. You don't just feel like you failed the course, you feel like you are the failure. The teacher doesn't argue with the boy's report card. He doesn't say, "No, you're actually secretly brilliant." Instead, he shifts the frame completely and points to the lake. "Say you did your best," he tells him, "because that's all any human can honestly do." But then he goes further and uses that simple boat as a living metaphor. Suddenly, the boy's failure trip home becomes something sacred. The mentor explains that the boat is the boy's life, and the golden wake is the effect he has on others. Most people think only successful or famous lives create wakes, but the teacher shows that every life, even one that doesn't shine on a stage, sends out ripples. The way someone listens, the way they apologize, the way they get up after a blow, that all becomes a silent teaching. Often, the people who think they've failed are the ones quietly inspiring others the most, precisely because they're real, not polished. He connects this to real-world examples. Maybe there's a nurse who never built a big business, never wrote a book, but the way she cares for patients changes entire families. The older neighbor who always waves, checks on kids, and brings soup to the sick might have no social media, no brand, no fancy title. Yet if you followed the ripples of her kindness, you'd see them stretching across decades. Kids become gentler adults because they once felt seen by her. Strangers remember her smile on dark days. The mentor admits that for many listeners, the biggest pain isn't burnout, it's feeling ordinary. They scroll online and see big lives, influencers, gurus, rich people, perfectly curated success stories. Their own life looks like laundry, work, cooking, paying bills, and helping people who don't always say thank you. It's easy to think, my wake is nothing, I'm just existing. But the teacher by the lake gently disagrees. He says, watch the ripples. You're underestimating what your presence does. To make it practical, he invites the listener to think of just one person who treated them with unexpected kindness. Maybe it was a teacher who believed in them, a friend who showed up when everyone else vanished, or even a stranger who defended them once. Those people probably never thought, I'm changing this person's life right now. They were just being themselves. Yet here you are, years later, still feeling the warmth of their golden wake. If they can do that without trying, so can you. He compares it to driving a car at night. You can only see a few meters ahead, but the headlights still take you home. In the same way, you can't see where your wake ends, but that doesn't mean it's small. Every patient choice, every calm response, every act of empathy lights up someone else's road a little. The boy in the story wanted to be a famous monk with students and speeches. The the teacher offers him something subtler, but just as powerful. A life that teaches by example. The mentor also touches on that phrase, "I did my best." A lot of people choke on it because they confuse my best with perfect. But the old master is realistic. Your best with anxiety at 2 a.m. is different from your best on a sunny vacation. Your best as a tired parent is different from your best as a teenager with no responsibilities. Recognizing that context isn't an excuse, it's honesty. And honesty is where real growth starts. He gently asks the listener, what if your job is not to become impressive, but to become true? The golden wake doesn't come from pretending to be a flawless monk. It comes from a heart honestly trying to be kind, present, and wise in very human conditions. He tells stories of people who failed exams but became amazing mentors, people who never finished school but raised emotionally intelligent kids. Their diplomas are written in the hearts of those they touched. You can't hang that on the wall, but it's worth a lot more. To ground this, he suggests a small daily practice. At the end of the day, instead of asking, "Was I successful?" ask, "Where did I leave a golden wake today?" Maybe you really listened to someone who needed it. Maybe you didn't yell even though you were tempted. Maybe you sent a message checking in on a friend. These seem small, but they're waves moving outward. He also talks about the shame of going back home without a title. The boy worries about what to tell his family, just like many adults fear reunions, group chats, or family gatherings. What will they think of me? I'm not who they expected. The master's answer, "Say you did your best," isn't a slogan. It's a shield against narrative attacks. You can't control what others project, but you can control the truth you stand on. And that truth is stronger than any label they try to stick on you. The mentor shares a personal reflection about people he once judged as wasting their potential. Years later, he realized some of them became the safest people to be around. Not rich, not famous, but emotionally generous, non-judgmental, steady. Their wake was golden, even if their resume was thin. That forced him to question his own definition of important life. Maybe the scoreboard he was using was broken from the start. He highlights something subtle the teacher shows the boy. Every ripple in the wake reflects sunlight back to the sky. That means every small act of goodness not only touches people horizontally, but also shines vertically, like a quiet prayer. Your kindness is not just social, it's spiritual. It's a way of cooperating with something bigger than you. Call it God, Tao, or simply life itself. The boy's life can still be a sermon, even if he never preaches one formal word. He knows that by now, something inside you feels different, even if you can't quite explain it. Maybe your breathing has softened, your muscles have let go a little, and your thoughts sound less like shouting and more like distant conversation. You've just walked through 25 Zen stories that weren't just about monks, warriors, kings, and thieves. They were about you, your worries, your past, your expectations, your tiny daily battles. And whether you noticed it or not, every story quietly handed you a new way to look at your own life. That alone already makes tonight very different from a normal night of tossing and turning. Now comes the part most people skip, actually using this wisdom when the headphones come off. The next time a problem shows up, you can ask, am I being the glass or the lake? When someone misunderstands or criticizes you, you can remember Master Hakuin's calm, "Is that so?" When your mind wants to replay old scenes from the past, you might picture the empty backpack and ask, "Do I still need to carry this?" You don't have to get it right every time. You just have to remember that you have options now. Let me ask you something gently, almost like a friend at a cafe. How long are you going to keep believing that your mind is your enemy? How many more nights will you lie awake thinking you're broken, when all that's happening is a tired brain trying to protect you in clumsy ways? What would your life look like if you treated your thoughts less like attackers and more like children who are scared and don't know how to say it? You've seen tonight that even a thief can be transformed by unexpected kindness. Why not start offering that same kindness to the person who's been with you since day one? Yourself. You don't need to remember all 25 stories to change your life. Just pick one that really stuck with you and carry it into tomorrow like a small candle. Maybe it's the warrior who discovered hell and paradise in his own reactions. Maybe it's the man under the wishing tree who lost everything the moment he doubted he deserved good things. Maybe it's the simple shepherd who decided to like the weather he couldn't control. One story lived is worth more than 100 stories admired. So here's a small challenge for the next 24 hours. Choose one tiny action that matches the wisdom you heard tonight. Listen a little longer before reacting. Forgive one small thing you've been obsessing over. Let yourself enjoy one good moment without waiting for it to end badly. That's it. No huge life overhaul, no drama, just one quiet step in the direction of inner peace. And now, a loving warning. Tomorrow, your old patterns will try to come back. Your mind might say, "That video was nice, but life is still the same." When that voice appears, you can smile a bit and remember the ghost who couldn't even count the beans in a hand. Not every thought deserves to be treated like a sacred prophecy. You're allowed to doubt your doubts. You're allowed to outgrow the voice that insists you're stuck forever. If this journey touched you, even a little, don't walk it alone. There's a whole path of stories, practices, and insights waiting to go deeper with you. So, if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications. That simple click is like telling your future self, "I'm serious about taking care of my inner world." Every new video will be another gentle reminder, another night where you don't have to wrestle with your mind in the dark. You'll slowly build a library of peace that you can return to whenever life gets loud. And if you're still awake right now, you have two beautiful choices. You can close your eyes and let sleep come, trusting that tonight's wisdom is already working quietly inside you. Or, if you feel called to keep going, the next step of your journey is waiting for you. On the end screen, you'll see a video about how to turn your overthinking into a powerful ally instead of a sleepless enemy, a perfect companion to what you started here. Click it if you want to go further, or let it play softly as you drift off. Either way, remember, peace isn't somewhere out there. It's already here, in you, learning to wake up even as you fall asleep.